Now we got to switch here.
Is that now the presentation laptop?
Yes, I think so. For the recording. Is that a power or is that audio? Do we power jack? Or?
That's our other issue.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Okay. I don't know if we need that anyway. We'll find out.
Just found out from the guys in the back. We have to speak up.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Switching to laptop display. There was a gentleman here earlier, audio, video. Is that gentleman still here? Switching to laptop display up here.
The IT guy go, there. We need your help.
Yeah, there he is.
Well, help comes from a specific question. You need to switch from that system to the laptop. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. So here we find our laptop and just pull it to whichever screen you want it.
Yeah. Okay.
And there you go. Cool. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. So I'm the first of 4 speakers here. This is Tweaks, Tyler, and Ben. I think I got that right. I had Ben and Tyler mixed up earlier. We apologize for the technical delays. We were doing some Zoom stuff here, so we just got that worked out. So I'm Brad Tilley. I'm with Virginia Tech. I'm the Director of Security Architecture in our Red Team. I've been in IT for 20, 25 years. And tonight, I'm just going to do a very brief demo of bypassing 2FA and how to do that with DTMF tones. Most of you guys are younger. Some of you are older, my age. You might remember the old Western electric telephones, Model 500s. They were rotary based. This was before touch tones, dual tone, multi-frequency type systems. And I used to use one of those phones to authenticate with Duo. Right? Well, how did I do that? I just emitted a tone when Duo called me. And from that experiment, this was years and years ago, I figured out how to use DTMF tones in voicemail to automate 2-factor. And that's the gist of this presentation tonight. Pretty simple. So we start off in the physical world thinking about what's the best way to gain access to a house. And this is a real simple, concrete example, right? But many people don't think this way. So just pretend for a minute that you're a criminal and you want to get into a house and you're risk averse. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want to break your wrist or your leg or your knee, and you don't want to cause a scene, but you want access to that house, right? What do you do? Audience, what do you do? How do you get access to that house? What would you do?
Window.
What was the back? Knock on the door. That's actually the second thing I would do. The first thing I would do is just turn the doorknob. Maybe it's unlocked, and that's what doorknobs are for, right? And that's not going to cause a scene. And you can explain yourself if you have to. Maybe tell someone you're having a sugar event or you're drunk from the night's events of the past or whatever, right? If that doesn't work, right, the doorknob is locked. What do you do? As this gentleman suggested, just knock on the door, because that's how we get people to open doors, right? We knock on the door. If someone opens the door, what do we do? Well, we can pretend to need help, right? My daughter, she was playing in this alleyway and I've lost her. Can I borrow your phone just for a second? Right? We appeal to their emotions, or we pretend to be an authority figure, right? Census Bureau, phone company, electric company, police department. Okay, well, what if they don't open the door? What do we do? Well, we go find a key like this gentleman here has in the hardware store, right? It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We all understand these concepts, but hey, Brad, I thought you were a computer scientist. Why are you talking about doors and keys, right? Because most people can relate to this concept, and passwords are keys. Keys unlock doors, passwords unlock systems. They're both a primary security protocol that we've all used for 40 to 50 years. They're the oldest primary security protocol. And voicemail systems are protected by passwords or PINs, right? And a PIN is a password that's just numeric, right? So, and we can abuse voicemail systems to bypass 2FA, which I'm going to demonstrate here. And this is pre-recorded. I could do this to myself now in real time. I don't want to. I only use YubiKeys or TOTP for my second factor because I'm aware of telephony attacks and I know how vulnerable telephone systems are. And they're all today connected to the internet and easily accessible from anywhere in the world. So we'll just watch this video. I hope you can hear this. My demo video may not work. And this is supposed to be the backup. Here we go. We're just loading. Slow network. Share it. Yeah. Pointed out.
It's good point. So it's a bright green little icon on the bottom right there. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Hit the bottom left that says share sound.
Oh yeah, on the bottom left of this window. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can just hit share.
I don't know if we have any Zoom attendees, but anyway.
I think
it's for the recording.
Oh, for the recording.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, everyone. I have no audio. I'm going to do a demonstration here to show how we can bypass Duo not plugged in two-factor authentication with you can tell we're real D. Okay. TMF tones record. Yeah. So I don't know how many people is going to watch this recording. Can we just switch back to this because this worked earlier?
I use this thing. I got to do is
just
grab whichever screen we need.
Okay. Yeah, I want this guy right here.
All right, thank you.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to do a demonstration here to show how we can bypass Duo two-factor authentication with DTMF tones recorded in voicemail. Here I have a private browsing window. This is Firefox. And I'm just going to go to the website here at Virginia Tech where I have to log in. I'll just use my credentials, which are saved in the web browser. Here, we come to Duo. By default, it's me to use my YubiKey, which is my general way to do two-factor authentication. However, that's the phone ringing. This is a Zoom virtual phone. It was answered. Voicemail is playing now. See, the two-factor worked without me having any interaction with Duo. And I'll log in there in Canvas. Okay, just to demonstrate what the voicemail sounds like now. Zoom. I'll sign into that. I'm setting cookies, so from the previous logon that you just saw. Go to my phone, look at the settings, and listen to the voicemail. Hello, this is Brad Tilley. I'm the Director of Security Architecture in the Red Team here at Virginia Tech. I'm sorry I'm unable to take your phone call at the moment. However, if you leave a brief message to include your name and a callback number, I'll return your call as soon as possible. Thank you and have a good day. And so it's just a brief demonstration to show how DTMF tones recorded in a voicemail message can be used to automate or bypass two-factor authentication. In this case here, our two-factor vendor is Duo, but it could be any two-factor vendor that allows this type of phone callback to conduct 2FA. Thanks for watching. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell, right? So those DTMF tones are played at certain frequencies, and the Duo system is just listening for that frequency. And once it hears it, it could be any of those. In our case at Virginia Tech, we allow any of those tones, right? You could try to be smart and say, well, you got to press 7 or you got to press 3. And that could be overcome as well. Basically, telephone-based 2FA methods are not really 2FA, right? And they're very easily bypassed. So, that's the gist of my presentation to you all. And there's various ways I could abuse this as a red teamer, as a hacker. I could forward someone's phone, right, to my voicemail if I was unable to change their voicemail. I could do various things here. So, and I won't get into all the details and bore you with that because there are 3 other presenters here that have more in-depth things to present to you all. But what I would recommend, and that's in this code repository, is how to mitigate this, right? So you don't allow telephone-based 2FA methods in your environment. Basically, you want to have a YubiKey or you want to have a TOP-P, which is time-based one-time passwords. I use both of those, but typically I use a YubiKey, as you saw when I was prompted by Duo. I carry it on my keychain, right? You can't steal that from China, right? You'd have to knock me over the head and take it out of my pocket, right? So that's the most secure 2FA method that you would want to employ as an organization. Any questions?
You were considered implants.
Implants. No, I haven't.
I've got some friends.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically, I think, WebAuthn, right, for the 2FA. Most people are using that for website authentication. So yeah. All right, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. While Toad's setting up, is and from a red team perspective, if you needed to compromise a high-level official at your organization, what would be your first step? Because that still relied on the first factor, your username and password being cached in the browser. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't want to get
So what would be
given away.
What would, as a red team lead, what would you typically do to get to that for that first factor?
The password for like a VP or something like that.
Yeah, whether it's cached, would you take over his laptop and do it from that perspective?
Yeah,
knowing he had it cached, or
I would learn about the individual. I would start researching the individual. So
I'm not going to use this machine. I'm not going to use it. It's not worth it.
Dogs in his password, no dogs, something like that. I do a lot of recon about the individual. Yeah, I think that's where I would start.
By the way, if anyone has any questions about password statistics and probabilities, this is your guy. He's like Mr. Password for Virginia Tech. So, I still want to pick your brain on how you write your dictionary algorithms.
Yeah,
that's some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Cool. Thanks, Brad.
Smart. You're a good guy. Much better guy than me.
I had too many coworkers. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, we're gonna use Canva for this, so hopefully I don't screw anything up. Am I loud enough? Can we hear in the back? Okay, cool. Hi, yeah, my name's Tyler Booth. I'm going to be giving a presentation on exploiting vulnerable drivers. That is going to be a very dry and dense topic, probably, so I'll try and make it as light as I possibly can. That being said, don't worry if you don't have all the background. So a little bit about me. This is me and my second wife. We got an annulment shortly after. If you know, you know, over in yeah, don't worry about it. Anyway, I'm a principal offensive security consultant at CDW. I primarily specialize in leading the adversary simulation team, and I'm very passionate for Windows system internals. The QR code here is just, it goes to like my CV or whatever. If you guys want to see any of the other projects that I work on, it's all there. So I'm going to give you guys a quick primer on Windows drivers, specifically Windows drivers. We're not talking about Linux or anything else. We're only going to talk about Windows because Windows is the largest attack surface and I like it. So Microsoft says that a driver is this nice quote here in the first bullet point. It's a software component that lets the operating system and a device communicate with each other. I would caveat that with that not all drivers actually have to interact with a physical device. There are, a couple different types of drivers. You have different software drivers, function drivers, filter drivers, which expand on the capabilities of an existing driver. So there's like a lot of documentation that Microsoft has. You can probably learn drivers for the rest of your life and probably still not know anything about them, as is my experience. So we're going to cover a little bit of Windows system architecture. You can see there's a clear delineation here between the user mode of the operating system and the kernel mode of the operating system. So user mode, imagine the presentation software, the PowerPoint, your browser, whatever that tends to run in user mode. This nice little area within the operating system. Oh my goodness, I hit the space bar, which is not the move. Technical difficulties. But drivers mostly run in the kernel. And the kernel is this space in the operating system that kind of serves as like that go-between the software, like the user mode components of the operating system, and then the actual physical hardware. So if you're in the kernel, you pretty much have God mode on the machine that you're kind of operating in. So a lot of drivers run at that level. And that means they have high privileges. Some developers who write device drivers, they kind of perceive them as being secure because they exist in the kernel and the kernel is secure because it's supposed to be. But that's a mistake. There are several bug classes that kind of exist in Windows drivers. They can be abused for like local privilege escalation, denial of service, arbitrary code execution, and we're going to cover a particular instance of this. And it's actually, I think it's going to be pretty fun to see. So we're going to exploit a vulnerable driver. So I think we would be remiss if we did not mention two very popular vulnerable drivers you've probably heard of. Capcom.sys, which was a vulnerable driver that was associated with the Street Fighter V anti-cheat that was written so poorly that a low-privileged user could send a specially crafted buffer to the driver that disabled a kernel-level protection and allowed for arbitrary code execution from the kernel level, which is, again, God mode privileges, right? Same thing, shipped with a bunch of Dell hardware was this DBUtil 2.3 driver. That also allows for like privilege escalation through like code execution and some other like coolness. There's a lot of documentation on those two drivers. So if you're interested in this topic, you should go read somebody else's who's smarter than me's blog posts. You'll probably have more fun. So anyway, I broke away from the theme of the occult just for like a moment for Ryu to do a Hadouken. So we're going to talk about the Benalize irec.sys driver. This is actually a CVE that I got with a friend of mine, Mike Alfaro. Now, this particular driver is actually associated with a digital forensics and incident response product. So do with that information what you will. I'm going to use Binary Ninja as my like disassembler of choice, just because I can't afford an IDA Pro license and my work won't buy it. And I'm not spending $5,000 of my own money. So we're going to use Binary Ninja instead. You can use Ghidra, I guess. I just like Binary Ninja more. So we have some code here. This is directly from Binary Ninja. And I think this is, kind of like the beginning of the driver. So it's the entry point of the driver. Pretty much any piece of software that you have is going to have like some sort of like entry point where you can like interact with it, especially if it's like a library, like a DLL or drivers in this particular instance. And we can actually see like there are two functions that are kind of listed here. One's called driver entry. I named it that because I reverse engineered the driver and I like to name things I can understand. So we're going to dive into that particular function. So you can see that it's passed a parameter called a driver object. And I hit spacebar again because I'm a monster. So now we have even more code. That's a lot to see, especially if you're in the back. So there's a PDF version of the slides. You can check them out in your free time. And you might not know what all of this means, and that's okay because we're just going to kind of go through it. So this is where the driver is like setting up the actual device. So the device is what like software would interact with to send information like to like a physical device or to like in this case it's like a software device. And so you can actually see like we have this one function here. This is actually where the name of the device is being defined by the driver. Kind of same thing down here. This is like a symlink for that device. And then we can see down here we have these like major functions. I'm not going to go like into all of the intricacies of like how you might interact with a driver, but I will let you know that like, typically you're sending buffers to like a specific like device control like dispatch function. And then that'll dispatch that buffer to other functions within the driver. So this is how we actually control the driver. So that's where like all the code and everything for vulnerable functions will be.
Did you rename some of these to make them more useful? Or?
Yes. Yeah. So some of these I did rename. So I named that device control dispatch, and I named the other one device create close down there. And that's just based off of the major function. So there's this ERP-MJ device control. So that's how you know you're controlling the driver. And then there's like a create and close function. Another interesting thing, and this is useful for anyone who wants to do like reverse engineering, is we see that IO create device function here. That's actually like a Windows API. That's a native like Windows API. So that's documented by Microsoft. And so when I'm reverse engineering anything, I look for these like documented Windows APIs and I'll rename the variables and I'll retype everything to kind of fit the standards of the documentation. So I've renamed this like driver object, device name. There's a lot there. So, but what makes this driver vulnerable? We haven't even gotten there. So I guess I'll show you. We're actually going to look at the device itself. So this is a device that gets created by the driver. And we're looking at this built-in group in Windows, everyone. And we can actually see that the everyone group has read and write access to the driver. So that's not read and write access in like the traditional sense where maybe pen testers are thinking of like ACLs and like Active Directory or something like that. This just means that we can read data from the driver and we can write data through like a buffer that we send to the driver. And then there are like special permissions. Who knows what that is? It's not relevant. So now we're going to look at the device control dispatch, which is like another big chunk of code. Who cares? And that's fair. What's actually important here is we actually determine like kind of like this base floor for this all the way down at the bottom. That's actually the base for what's called an IOCTL, so an IO control code that you send in the driver. So when you're actually interacting with the driver, it's expecting a specific code to be sent with the buffer that you're sending in order to, dispatch that buffer to the correct function. So this is actually the base, and that's relevant in a bit because you can see at the beginning of that line, there's a switch statement. That's in this particular driver. each function, like code path, is they're basically like cases in a switch function. So we're looking at one. This is actually the simplest one to exploit. So you can see case hex 20. And there's some interesting stuff in there. I renamed one of those functions. I renamed it open process. And that's just because, like, look, the developers put debug print statements in there. It kind of lets us know exactly what this function does. It opens a process for a specific process ID. But if we didn't have those debug, print statements, like how are we going to figure that out? Well, we're going to open up the function and we're going to take a look at it, and you'll see down there at the bottom. So I didn't put an arrow there. False alarm. I kind of jumped there. You can actually see there's this other function called ZW open process there. That is another documented Windows API. So based on the parameters of that particular function and the types for those like variables in those parameters, I was able to determine that open process function is accepting a process ID. It has an access mask. It's actually hard coded. And then there's like a third parameter, which didn't matter. And then you can see that there's like a process handle that gets returned by that function. And all of that was kind of, we did a little divination, as the slide says, by looking at Microsoft documentation, which anyone can do. It's freely available. So we now know that we have to supply a process ID to the driver. There's a hard-coded access mask that the driver just has. So you can see the access mask is the second parameter there. It's a bitwise like calculation. We're not gonna like dive too deep into it, but I will tell you what it adds up to. It's a process query information and process VM read. That means, in simplest terms, that as an attacker, if this driver was loaded on a system, we can read virtual memory from a process that we receive a process handle from. So we learned quite a lot in like the first couple minutes of this presentation, but we found the driver's entry point. We found the device's name that the driver creates. We ended up finding like the dispatch function. We've even identified the ioctls. And we found a function within the driver that looks pretty interesting to us. So we can retrieve that process handle with virtual memory read permissions, which is really cool if you're an attacker. That might not be directly relevant to a lot of people who might not have experience with this. So we're going to write a spell based on the information that we had. So we're actually going to like write an exploit, not live, screenshots, of course. So we have like all the information that we kind of gathered. So we have like that base for the ioctl, that IO control code, and we're just doing a little bit of math. Take the offset of the switch case and add it to the base, and you now have landed in the function that you're trying to hit when you're sending information to the driver. We also have the device. That's the device name that gets created, and I have a structure down here that literally is just like a process ID. You probably don't even need a structure, but it's good to like pack it up and send it over the buffer. So here's a little bit further down in the proof of concept code here. We can actually see where the structure is being set up. We're assigning a process ID to the structure, and then we're sending that structure to the with the ioctl using a Windows API called device IO control. So if you ever are like writing code to interact with drivers, you use this function quite a lot. And so we're going to open up a connection with the driver, and we're going to submit our data. And then here is where the actual practical application of this knowledge comes into play. So we get a process handle with virtual memory read permissions, which means that we can use a function like mini dump write dump, if anyone's familiar, to interact with that process handle and create a mini dump with full memory from the process, which is cool. So we can do that with any process, and it's all happening in the kernel. So that's rad. So what does that look like? Well, we have a demo, an actual demo video. It's pretty small. So here we're using our exploit to create a process dump. And then we're going to use Mimikatz, the ultimate Windows tool, to load the mini dump file, which we have done. And then I'm going to fat finger the command a couple times because you're a hacker and that's what happens. And we're going to dump credentials from the LSASS process. So that's in Windows terms, that's where like all of your credentials will get stored in memory. So we did all that from a driver that's running in the kernel. Now, why would you do that? I guess. Well, you know, EDR kind of sucks. So maybe you want to dump LSASS and not have EDR yell at you, so you do it from the kernel. I don't know. I'll leave that as an exercise, like a thought exercise. So now
I got a question.
Yeah.
So in that exercise there, would you have set off any antivirus flags?
Well, they don't like it usually if you run like mini dump, write dump. So there are probably like other ways that you could like interact with the process handle, but it's specifically when you like interact with like process handles for LSASS, especially EDR does not like that. Oh, sorry.
Because you have kernel level privileges there, you can unhook all the stuff. Basically prevent.
If the driver had functions that would let you do that, you probably could. This one only has like a couple select functions because it's like an incident response tool. So it allows you to dump memory for different processes, and it also allows you to enumerate and like read like physical memory locations, which are non-contiguous spaces of memory. So it's like kind of a pain to actually like leverage like physical memory read if you don't have like some other exploit primitive where you're able to do like a physical to virtual memory like address translation. That's outside of the scope of what I wanted to talk about. But if we could get a kernel level driver that does the things that we'd want it to do. For example, a very popular form of tradecraft that attackers use now is they find drivers that have functions that terminate processes. So then you use a driver that terminates processes. It's signed by Microsoft. You load it up as an attacker onto a system and you just kill the EDR. So there's like stuff that you can do to like, you know, from the kernel to like maybe, you know, blind the defense in some capacity. But we'll talk a little bit about defenses. So there's some mitigation, I guess we could talk about, which is you should probably keep drivers in your environment up to date. That's hard to do at scale. I get it. I think also if you have old drivers on your endpoints that don't need to be there anymore, you should probably just uninstall them. Again, harder to do in practice than in theory, as is all things in the real world. Microsoft has a recommended driver block list. It exists out there. You can just Google it. Again, Microsoft documentation does exist. I will say it's a little bit anemic, and they take a very long time to update the list. However, there is an open source project called LOL Drivers, Living Off the Land Drivers, by some guys that are really, really smart. Some of them work at like Elastic and some other like defense companies. It's arguably better than the official driver block list because it's just more complete. It's open source. People will find vulnerable drivers. They'll commit them to the project, and it's constantly changing, expanding. But from a defense and like detection perspective, they have like hash lists that you can use, Sigma rules, Yara rules. You can do sysmon blocking. They even have like Windows Defender application control policies that you can apply on your like fleet that will just prevent the loading of these known vulnerable or even known malicious drivers. And I guess if you're a developer who writes driver code, you should maybe consider using more stringent device ACLs. There are a couple different ways you can maybe do that. There's a function called IO create device secure or create secure device. I can't remember. You can also like explicitly say like, this is the ACL I want applied to my device, which would be nice. Otherwise, you're going to end up with like everyone having access to read and write the driver from like a low privilege context. That's it. I thought it was going to be much longer, so we did it. Hey.
Yeah, sorry to ask. So, as an attacker, how much cleanup is you know, target machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like I have a tool, I have a couple tools that do this, but uh basically it will like load the driver, execute the function, and then unload the driver. So that's like another avenue of detection, I guess, is like if you see like, you know, Windows event logs, like, oh, look, somebody loaded a driver. Oh no, a driver got unloaded. That's probably a good way to maybe detect it. But yeah, so like some of the tools that I have, I'll just like embed the driver as a resource in like an executable or something, like some tool. I might like bit flip it or like, you know, pack it in some way. And then like during runtime, it'll just like get like unpacked or something, deobfuscated in memory, loaded via like Windows API. The driver code gets executed and then it gets unloaded and then it goes away. So there are a couple different ways that you could do it from an attacker's perspective. So like my goal for this talk was really to show how like the meta in offensive tradecraft kind of shifts and changes. So you're going to see more and more usage of bring your own vulnerable drivers in like attacks. It's kind of required to operate in the ever-changing and advancing security landscape. I mean, things like EDR are really like a force multiplier for clients. Even the worst environments can be a pain to hack if they have tools. Like, even if they have no idea what they're doing with them now, the tools sometimes are too good. And so as an attacker, you might want to know some of this tradecraft because it's useful to operate out of the kernel. As a defender, you might want to know this tradecraft because attackers do this. There are rootkits, bootkits, all kinds of stuff that are leveraging like vulnerable drivers. They have been doing this forever. This is like new to me, but not new to the industry. And who knows, maybe it's not new to some of you, and maybe it is new to some of you. And this will give you an opportunity to think about like, okay, how are we protecting ourselves against vulnerable drivers? And maybe you're an exploit researcher and you want to get some CVEs. You should just go look at any security vendor's product, pull their driver, and just start looking at it, because security products tend to have like insane functions in them that do crazy stuff, like this one, for example. It's like required for their product to work, but they just made some design flaws like when they initially wrote the code. It's since been fixed, by the way. They're cool, by the way. So anyway, that's the end. That's it. Hi. Yeah, well, so if you are enforcing like the Microsoft like driver signing like kernel protections, you can't just load an unsigned driver. But if you find a vulnerable driver that belongs to a legitimate product that has gone through Microsoft's QA process, whatever that is, it will be signed and allowed to load by the operating system, like this one. It only just happened after we got the CVE and the disclosure for this that Microsoft actually added this to their default block list. So it's in like their, I think, WDAC policy. But this driver had been known about as being vulnerable for a very long time because it was in the lol drivers repository for a while. There was just no public documentation on it. There was no CVE for it. But somebody somehow knew that it was vulnerable. I guess they just didn't pursue it. So I did, and it is what it is.
So just you and the NSA.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure they have better. I'm sure they have better like adversarial tradecraft than I do. So
They should know.
they should. It's their job. That's my job though too.
As a penetration tester, when you first get access to a system and you pivot in and do you have a list of things you look for like this, or are you delivering it as a type of privilege escalation?
Well, I wouldn't deliver it as a privilege escalation because a non-administrator can't load a driver.
Right.
But if you're looking for PrivEsk, you look for vulnerable drivers that are already loaded. If you're bringing your own vulnerable driver, that's typically so you can perform post-exploitation activities from.
You already got.
Yeah. So yeah, you might want to kill the EDR. You might want to dump processes or something. So there's a time and a place to bring your own vulnerable driver, but yeah, it's typically during like that post-exploitation phase. So but yeah, if you happen to be doing a red team or a pen test on an organization that has like a Dell fleet and they just haven't updated any of their drivers, better check for DBUtil, 2.3, see if that's still installed on their fleet, because now you do have like privilege escalation, and there are copious amounts of proof of concepts out there that exploit it. So
domain admins have been known to play games on this thing.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you guys so much for attending the event. I won't hit the space bar anymore. What I'll do is I'll just close that out. Thanks.
Thank you, Tyler. Small token of appreciation. I'll give that to you. I get one to Brad here as well.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm probably gonna steal this.
This one's doing Zoom.
Yeah, I think I have a quick idea. Let me see what I can do here.
Power.
Okay, yeah. I don't need it, but
Just in case. Murphy's pitch.
Yeah, no joke. No joke. Okay, so we're gonna have that going.
I don't have a name tag.
You're in. Perfect. We're gonna see if this works. I hope it does. Please work.
I'm actually not. I get them so.
Oh geez.
Not saving that history.
Yeah, anything I say won't be remembered once I go to bed tonight.
Well, it's immortalized right here, so.
It shouldn't be.
We can switch the display, I think. So I think I can. How do I switch to the HDMI on this? Not that advanced yet. I was assuming I did this before. Here.
This one bypass I had for silence works still to this day.
Yeah, sorry. Right screen is that
literally just go into like the program files.
Oh, drag and drop, no way.
Okay, that works. That works. But we want to do that, and then I want to do this screen.
They don't have a huge market here.
That's fine. Yeah, that works. Perfect.
Cool, dude.
Awesome. I need to grab my mouse, but then we will get started here.
Yeah.
Grab my mouse.
One time.
We used to do VAR for it.
Yeah.
And other stuff back when we didn't.
One time I was like doing a red team engagement and I dropped like a payload through an MSI or whatever. I was just using like MSI custom actions to execute those DLLs. And in semi one there was zero telemetry. Like they like saw the process get created kind of, but they like completely like no information. Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be just 1 second, folks. Sorry.
They've since fixed that, but
where are you? There you are.
looks good for the
and I can do this. I'm going to
just become like a CISO or something.
Well, that's very laggy, but that should be fine.
It's multiple layers.
Wait, why are there two? Okay, that's crazy. Oh well. This is PowerPoint. Yeah, this is nowhere near as good as Canva though.
I've actually
And I am gonna steal this. Okay.
You people cut this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I need to
You want any water? Are you good to go?
oh yeah, no, I'm good. I'm getting over a very bad cold, so if I just cough for a second, sorry.
What? I've been sitting next to you this whole time.
Was getting over it, you know.
Yeah, getting over it.
No, it was like last week. It's an excuse if I just die right here. That's probably
Dude, I have no excuse. I'm just bad at the running.
dude. I love your presentation. I don't know what you're talking about. I think it was perfect. Okay, we're still good there. Second, I thought I misspelled my name. Wait for Tweaks to say the go ahead.
Last name was legitimately Eldridge.
It wasn't, but it is now.
I was like, that's a common last name, and it's Brad. So
That's the goal. No, that's not my original last name. Very easy to find if you want to do a little OSINT challenge on me, but
good.
was that?
I said I'm good.
No, when I got married, last year, we both changed our names. Just we've been thinking about this for a while. So
Are you both Eldridges?
Yep, we're both Eldridges.
Nice.
Both Eldridge beings, if you will. Where's he go? Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, welcome, guys. Thanks for coming again. I'm Ben. This will hopefully not be too long. I do have something I would like to demo live. If that doesn't happen or if something just breaks, then I do have a walkthrough posted in the in that link over there. So I have both a walkthrough and the actual link to the Try Hack Me box. I did create sort of a web app that will eventually just go through and demo and kind of show you some of the concepts of what we're talking about today. But yeah, I'm essentially call this web app security 101. We go a little bit more in depth, and we also just touch some things lightly. So just to encompass everything, I'm just going to call it 101. So yeah. Okay, so quickly, a little bit about me if you've never seen me before. I'm not from Virginia, but I'm loving it so far. Definitely a huge mountain forest guy, so really great, really happy to be here. Currently work at Raytheon Technologies. I guess it's technically RTX at this point. If you ask me what that stands for, later we'll find out it actually stands for really technical xylophones. So that's a joke. It's not actually called that, but I am sort of a bushcrafter by day, hacker by night kind of guy. When I'm not in a terminal, I'm probably outside doing something dumb. Bushcrafting is definitely a huge hobby of mine. I really like to hey, go out in the woods and try to survive with literally nothing. So kind of one of those weird people. I've done a lot of stuff though. GICSP is my most recent cert. So that's like ICS, Industrial Control System Security. Got my OSCP a year ago now. Pentest Plus, CISA, all the fun CompTIA stuff. Also did Roanoke B-Sides 2023. Sort of gave a wireless workshop, which was really, really fun to do. Kind of upgrading it, and hopefully I can kind of showcase that again at another point in time. Did a lot of Iowa State cyber defense competitions, so like CDC defending stuff, defending against active attackers. A lot of web app pen testing, bug bounties, stuff like that. I love to play around with Venmo and PayPal's stuff. So if you ever have questions about how that stuff works, talk to me. Really fun stuff, very intricate. But also part of Rise, by the way. So if you're here from Rise, nice to see you guys again. But if you've never been with Rise, definitely, yes.
What is Rise?
Roanoke InfoSec exchange. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I almost said group. Yeah, Roanoke InfoSec exchange. Really, really awesome group. We kind of come together once a month and just kind of talk about different kind of security concepts. Sometimes we just get together to chat. Really fun. Yeah, drink beer. There you go. I have quite a few different handles. I don't really want to say that's my OPSEC, but the ones that I actually do display to people in the public, Contrabear, been the cyber one. So if you ever see any kind of username with those, it's probably me. I do have a blog. This site is safe.com. I also own this site is not safe.com. That's my C2. Don't touch that, please. But this site is safe.com. That's my blog. I barely post anything on there. I always throw any kind of slides I create on there though. That is also where the walkthrough is located for this demo if something breaks. So that is the computer. All right, so quick agenda right here. Like I said, I hope I'm not too long. I hope I don't, make everybody's attention spans go crazy. But I do want to talk about just a few really kind of important concepts. We'll first sort of go through OWASP and what they're about, and sort of some of the really fun tools and documents that we get from OWASP, which is essentially going to break us down into, actual web app security, right? We're going to be talking about secure coding and secure design. I know a lot of people like to think secure coding and secure design are the same thing. I argue that it is not, but some people have better arguments than mine. We'll also talk about negative outcomes, essentially what happens if you don't listen to what we're about to say. And if you're just like, I'm going to make my web app however I want, I don't care. Well, we're going to talk about what happens. We'll also go demo through Gilgamesh. That is the very, very simple, easy web app we'll be demoing. It is something I crafted out of multiple different other web apps I've, let's just say, explored. It's a lot of findings that I thought were really interesting, and I wanted to put them in a public place that did not have any actual company data. So very realistic, we'll say. Then we'll kind of go through 3 key vulnerabilities in Gilgamesh. We'll go through proper JWT usage, securing your GraphQL endpoint, and proper input validation. So without further ado, OWASP. So they are the Open Worldwide Application Security Project. They've been together for, I think it was the early 2000s. But essentially their statement, the global open community that powers secure software through education tools and collaboration. So these guys are a foundation that are always constantly working to improve the security of software through different kind of open source toolings. They also give different like seminars and workshops to provide best practices when developing applications. And of course, their most, some would say, infamous document being the OWASP Top 10. So this is released every 3 to 4 years, kind of just depends on what's going around in the environment. But the OWASP Top 10 is essentially going to be that is the wrong computer again. The OWASP Top 10 is the list, or excuse me, the top 10 most critical security risks to applications within that time frame. So I don't have it up here, but there was a relatively recent release in 2021, and that release is actually much different from the one in 2017, I think. Yeah, so the top 10 is almost always these top 10 security risks. However, with each iteration of the OWASP Top 10, they like to categorize them differently. So this year, number 1 is broken access control, where 4 or 5 years ago, number 1 was injections. But again, these are essentially the top 10 most found or most critical security risks in web applications. The data they collect is very widespread, and they have all that essentially open source. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you can go and read that yourself at the OWASP Top 10 website. This is essentially the best document to adopt for web application security and secure design, especially if this is like brand new to you, or if you're a developer and just sort of starting a project. This is really a key document you want to focus and be like, hey, does my application contain something of this nature, right? Or you know, if you utilize some kind of security scanning tool, a lot of like SAST and DAST solutions, which I think we'll talk about later, will utilize the OWASP top 10 list in their scanning profiles. So one that I have used before is called NetSparker, and their specific scanning policy will look through a web application dynamically and test specifically for the OWASP top 10 risks. So, you know, it'll try to access different things via broken access control, or test if there's any kind of cryptographic failures, or try to inject things. So a lot of fun stuff. And, you know, there's technically 10 distinct categories. I kind of argue with that. A lot really do kind of blend into each other, right? So we see broken access control as number 1, and then 4 is insecure design. I feel like you could argue that's the same thing, but they are very, very defined at the website. I'm not going to go through all 10 of them because they have a long like list of why they're actually called what they are. But you know, they overlap. That's at least my opinion. So the top 4 we're actually going to be looking at today are the top 4. So broken access control, cryptographic failures, injection, insecure design. I put this photo up here not knowing that they're numbered. These numbers have no relation to above. My bad. But this photo is actually just to kind of give a detail to what these top 4 OWASP risks kind of include, right? So maybe an attacker finds a hidden directory or route that has some kind of administrative function, and the backend server does not check if they're actually an admin or not. And so they're able to do some kind of request that really messes up all of your internal web stack, whether that be like the databases or connected cloud solutions. Yeah, that fun stuff. Also, if I'm going too fast, or if we need to like have a question, please feel free to interject. So secure coding. This is where I'm going to go into secure coding versus secure design, right? In general, when you are building out a web application, you want to make sure your project is avoiding known vulnerable and or unknown libraries. So this actually is, well, this happens all the time, but there was sort of a relatively recent kind of discovery of a bunch of really bad malicious packages within NPM. So that's the Node package manager. For people who aren't web developers, Node is essentially, I would say, is like the most used sort of web application backend development idea. But so yeah, there was a bunch of like malicious packages hidden within Node's like list. So people were going out and including these packages into their web apps without knowing that they were actually just leaving themselves wide open. And a lot of these packages will put on or will attempt to open some kind of backdoor, or perhaps it'll just try to exfil as much data as it can. And that's whenever the application is online, which is almost, or it should be all of the time, right? So secure coding, right? We want to make sure we're not including malicious packages or unknown packages, or excuse me, or known vulnerable packages. Now, Node/npm does have a really fun little thing where you can run a script called, or excuse me, you can run the command npm audit. Now, when you're building a web application, this typically will happen anytime you pull something, you pull a package from npm. But the problem with this is npm audit, while it is going to tell you if one of your packages, one of the libraries you're using for your web app, if it is vulnerable, if there's a known vulnerability, or if it's out of date, right? It'll be like, hey, I see you're trying to use this package in your project. It's out of date with this vulnerability. You should fix it. That's what essentially it'll do. So npm audit will do that, but it doesn't actually check your code. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But I actually will say the top 2 photos right here, those are really, really awesome bad packages that were placed into npm's list of publicly accessible packages for web applications. And so those 2 were definitely some of the most well-known malicious packages. They essentially started their own web server they ran their own JavaScript whenever you ran your project, which of course you probably don't want that happening. So secure coding as well, right? We're going to be talking about ensuring any kind of sensitive data within your application is encrypted during transit and rest. You want to make sure that any kind of sensitive data is not going to be easily readable by any other external process or external user. And so that's going to include, making sure whenever you're writing your application, making sure that you are encrypting passwords before you're putting them into the database, right? Whatever you're utilizing for the backend, you want to make sure that you're actually encrypting that data. And of course, right, you want to make sure you're sanitizing and validating user input, right? Anytime you're using some kind of route or you're getting some kind of user generated input, always make sure you're like checking and validating that input. An email probably has an @ sign in it. It probably will not have a bunch of colons and semicolons in it. So you probably shouldn't be accepting that. And of course, with secure coding, right, you should probably also be utilizing some kind of static application security testing tool. Kind of hard to say, but SAST tools. There are also DAST tools, which is dynamic application security testing tools. And essentially, SAST will be looking at your source code itself. Few examples, Code Sonar, Coverity. I believe GitLab actually does this as well. And there's a lot more like DAST tools as well, dynamic testing. I would suggest doing both of those, but specifically for secure coding, I would advise having some kind of SAST tool looking at your code before you put it into production. Because if you don't do that, bad things will happen. Talking to you. And I will say something or anything is better than nothing. So if you're just going to write code and push it out, please don't do that. That's how really bad things happen. We'll talk about later. But again, even the most like open source small SaaS program against your source code will help. I kind of laugh at npm audit, but it does tell you if, hey, your package is outdated, you probably shouldn't run this. So again, something is better than nothing regards to that. So your code is probably flawless, right? You're making sure you're not using any really bad or vulnerable functions. You're not including any kind of weird or stray packages. So it's probably solid, but is the logic? That's a really huge kind of thing. Hold on. Did that? Okay, I'm going to assume that share screen is still working. But yeah, right. So is the logic solid, right? And this is where I say secure code and secure design, you can kind of define them separately, right? We're going to be stating secure code as being the static solution, right? Your actual source code. But we're going to be talking about the design as in the actual logic of your code. So even if you're not utilizing really bad coding practices, you may have logic that just is completely broken and can be bypassed with ease. And unfortunately, having secure design can be really, really time consuming, right? You're going to have to go through a lot of different kind of testing and honestly, just rigorous testing across every little thing that you have in your application. Be like, hey, does this logic work? Hey, if I do this, is this going to work? Or hey, if a user gets into this space, can they do anything with that? And so, unfortunately, that takes a lot of time. And a lot of dev teams don't have that. But, the thing about this is a lot of insecure or bad design and logic issues, those won't be found on security scanners, right? Security scanners aren't going to be able to manipulate certain defined functions within your web app like a human could. That's just because automation is unfortunately not, at that level. It probably will be eventually, but a lot of logic and insecure design will be found by humans other than security scanners. And I find that a lot, especially with user-built applications. They'll run a SAST and DAST on it, and they're like, hey, I only had X vulnerabilities, and then I come in, and I'm like, no, you didn't. You have way more. But yeah, little perfect example of both bad code and bad design right here. Looks like there's a route posting to /error, and it's taking in a parameter and reading whatever that parameter is. It's going to read the file name, and so we don't see that it's validating or sanitizing any input. And even if it was, right, we probably don't want to have a function that reads a file directly, because that will lead to an LFI. Or yeah. So secure design, right? Isolating users wherever possible, as well as rate limiting, right? We want to make sure users aren't able to just spam any kind of thing they want, because eventually brute force will buy an attacker, will get an attacker somewhere. Brute forcing, you can just brute force directories from 0 all the way to like 1 billion, right? Obviously, that's going to take a lot of time, but eventually they will find that hidden directory or that hidden route or that hidden key. So make sure to rate limit folks. Threat modeling each component in the application, sort of like what I was saying, this is where that takes a lot of time, right? So if a user gets into this specific route or this specific directory, or they get access to this function, right? What else can they do? I kind of laugh at Twitter. I believe they actually had a admin panel console that was very accessible, and there was a huge sort of issue with that a few years, probably relatively close to last year. But yeah, so right, you want to make sure, hey, if somebody gets into this panel, can they actually do any damage? Which again, web apps scaling very, very large, it's going to probably take a very long time to do that. It's also just simple to just kind of thoroughly designing any kind of security roles, checks, and access controls, right? So ensuring that nobody can post or get from an API gateway that they shouldn't be, right? Or maybe only have very specific web app internal functions not be accessible anywhere else except the internal network. What I mean by that is, right, you probably don't want a database to be able to contact the outer wild, right? Or you probably don't want the internet to contact the database. You probably want to force folks to use the web app to contact the database, right? So just ensuring that you're really kind of separating and limiting those controls. Also utilizing like security gateways and WAFs, web application firewalls. Those will honestly take care of a big deal for you, as long as signatures match, unfortunately, which does not happen all the time. But those can alleviate a lot of stress. Those kind of security gateways and WAFs. On the right here, this is actually a little tidbit from a small RISE talk I gave. Found a site that was trying to go prod really, really quickly. They were like, hey, we got to get this deployed. I said, hold on. And they gave me a day to completely break open the app, and they, let's just say they didn't go to prod the next day. So this is what I mean by secure design, right? Maybe you have a very solid method of, hey, if somebody wants to reset a password or create an account and verify an email, right? They're going to have to utilize some kind of 6-digit number or PIN or whatever. Maybe they have to click a verify email button in their email inbox. Well, unfortunately, there was no rate limiting, and we were able to brute force a simple 6-digit code in just like 3 seconds. And so we were able to change somebody's password. We were also able to create users with different email addresses that gave us access to other things. So really fun stuff. But that's what I mean, right? Maybe the code was there, it was all there, but the design was not, right? They didn't design for somebody to just be able to splash 6 different digits constantly and boom, there's your access token. So negative outcomes, right? What happens if we just completely ignore everything? Well, web apps can be one of the most silent ways for people to get into you and honestly just gain a foothold, right? A lot of people will be monitoring their web apps for just kind of weird and malicious traffic going through. But the actual device that the web app sits on probably isn't being as monitored, right? So I can be doing things all in the background while you're just checking the web app logs, right? especially if you're not looking for something that you didn't know existed. It's going to be really hard to kind of figure that out. Web apps can also not just be modified internally, right? But they can do damage to external facing people as well, or, all of these users, right? So think about how I go to like ebay.com, right? I don't expect hidden JavaScript to be infecting my browser at that point, right? Or perhaps it's loading some kind of malicious plugin into my browser, or maybe a pop-up appears and it's like, hey, we got to redirect you here so that you can log into ebay.com, right? So if you get into a web app, not only can you just completely destroy it, but you can destroy any customer that uses it as well. And that's really the big takeaway. Other than, web apps really being ran in like a whole stack, right? So your website probably relies on 20 other different functions or features like databases and other like cloud functions within like AWS and Azure. So, if somebody gets into your web app, they're probably not only about to have keys to those, or maybe even source code to those functions as well. So again, really dangerous stuff if somebody breaks into your app. What's up?
So a quick question on security design, security teams.
Yes.
A lot of companies do apps, but they're hiring people from Europe, India. A lot of times bring teams together to different parts of it. Because the massive project one can do quickly.
Right.
And so in that situation, we have multiple teams, different countries coming together to build these platforms. Like, what's the basis for keeping control over the security design?
Yeah.
Until we have, and so the apps work.
Right.
But the question is, from your perspective, kind of seeing in the back end,
that's
like vulnerabilities and also like how consistent security is there.
And that's a really good question. It would be awesome to have somebody who has a real answer for that. Unfortunately, like you said, right, like a lot of these apps, they're gonna have like tons of different people working on it like constantly. Not only that, but it's got to be pushed. There's a deadline, right? There's actual things to meet. And so unfortunately with that, what I think would be a really good design is to have, so we would state that as like a DevSecOps team, right? Somebody that's actually checking the code that we're pushing into something before it actually reaches prod. And unfortunately, I know not everybody gets the chance to do that. And so that's where I'm like, really push for, if we can't spend the time on the design, really push to make sure that we're actually testing what we're writing, not just from like QA, does it work? But have some kind of separate team, have some kind of DevSecOps say like, hey, I'm coming in. That's too bad. You're going to have to wait a week because we got to test this, because that's going to save your butt. Yeah, I would say a good project manager, but
Well, so on top of that, you have a lot of companies that provide a platform.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's one of the issues of security, because now you're putting on someone else's credibility of quality.
Bingo. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? If you have two different kind of companies and they have separate applications, but there's some kind of communication between the two, right? You're going to have to really trust one. And that's I would say that's probably where like some contractual stuff comes into play, like, hey, making sure, but
who's responsible for security?
Yeah, who's actually responsible. Yeah.
Well, a lot of times it's more customer focused, so it's about speed.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about speed. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they're so focused on getting up and running, start getting testing, get it actually launched, then start building revenue.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, having that time of, okay, we just trust. And then you have issues after the customers get into it. That's a whole ballgame. I was curious. I've seen this process over and over again.
Yeah.
So get your feedback that you've seen before.
Secure design can also be architecture.
Yes.
Depending on your architecture and who you're working, like you've got a front end that's done and all of your securities and your REST API, you can segregate your teams so you can keep an eye on that. Like these guys know what they're doing, they're working over here. I don't care if the front end guy screws up because there's no security on the client side.
Yeah.
It's all on the REST back end. So if you have these, good walls in your architecture, then you can carve out portions that maybe are easier to get your hands around in the security sense.
And what your front end guys putting your security in your JavaScript anyway, right?
Yeah.
I should also preface, I'm not an actual developer. I'm just the one that's going to make you have a really bad headache for a week. So like if you have like actual developing experience and you see something that's like, you know, hey, actually, we kind of think about this. Let me know, because right, I get to work with you guys, but not to the extent that I wish I could. And that's actually sort of why I built this kind of Gilgamesh demo, because I kind of wanted to learn like what it's actually like to kind of have a really big time constraint while developing some kind of web app. So yeah. Yeah. All right. So those were the negative outcomes. Now we got to kind of do some fun stuff, hopefully, if everything works. This project I call Gilgamesh. I'm a fan of a very particular band, and I kind of like to throw out song names and lyrics to all of my projects. We'll just we'll read the flavor text here, just kind of give you a summary of what we got going on here. So Gilgamesh is a brand new cloud service for OT equipment. With Gilgamesh, we promise to keep your devices alive no matter the cost. Simply connect your OT devices in your factory to the Gilgamesh cloud and presto, factory management at the convenience of your home. Wow. We wondered why this kind of thing doesn't exist in today's market, so we figured we'll be the pioneers of this new age of connected factories. Gilgamesh, keeping your factory up forever. Like I said, so here's the actual Try Hack Me link. If you guys want to try this yourself, it's also in the notes. We will attempt to do this here today. I won't go step by step in my walkthrough. I'll kind of talk about some fun little things here and there. But hopefully I can get this. Oh, you know what I should have done? Oops. I should have started this machine here. So if you guys haven't utilized Try Hack Me, it's very, very nice. A little slow, but it is free. So that's like the biggest plus for me. This was honestly one of the easier platforms to put this on, because I didn't want to actually put this on a real site, because I will be getting root access to this box. So if I had that in a public IP, that would probably be a bad idea. So unfortunately, how I say this is free, it is slightly slow whenever we boot up a virtual environment. So we're going to have to wait roughly 5-ish minutes. I should have done this when I started talking, kind of forgot. But while we have that kind of going through, we will be breaking, you know what, actually, yeah. Some of the bigger kind of key points we'll be looking at here is GraphQL, which if you don't know, is sort of hard to explain what GraphQL is, but we can kind of think of it as a middleman between a client and different APIs. It's going to be essentially the guy that's really kind of crafting the data we pull from databases in and out in a much prettier format. I think that's the best way I'm going to be able to explain that. But yeah, we'll be taking a look at session tokens. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I am using a VPN connected to the Try Hack Me network.
Yeah,
really?
Virginia Western, they have some kind of management network.
That's weird, because I got mine running right now. Thank you. Somehow I got connected. Yes. Okay. So when you do go to this link, and it's currently private. To make it public, I have to like give them the write-up and stuff, which I have. It just takes time to make it public. You will have to like create an account to log in into Try Hack Me. So you will get like a login screen. And then once you create a Try Hack Me account, again, free. And there's a ton more resources on there than just what I'm doing here. But it is just a really quick, easy way to set up a virtual machine. That is strange though. I got into the VPN just fine. So okay, that would be it then. Yeah.
That Wi-Fi can get in. Oh, I need to get in. I'm going to try and hack me login. So yeah, and I tried to connect the VPN on that one. It didn't work. Yeah. Although I can see it worked for him, so I don't know why.
I have no idea why this worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me bring that up for you. I can find this. So yeah, /junior/Gilgamesh. Again, once it's public, I'll probably, well, I don't know how I'll edit that, but it will just be /Gilgamesh at some point, which somehow wasn't taken already. Gilgamesh is a great name for a box to play around with, so that was actually surprising to me. But yeah, I'm going to. Ooh, that was probably not very cool. Let me. Unfortunately, why this takes a little bit of time to actually get going here. Uh-oh. Just a second. Oh my goodness. Let me So there are a few web services that this virtual machine has to launch, which is why it takes roughly 10 minutes. So again, very grateful for TryHackMe to actually just provide these resources to the public. You can create your own room and do whatever you want. But the actual resources they use for the virtual machines are very, very slow unless you pay for it. So yeah, it has a few web apps. It has a few web backend stuff it has to load, which is why it takes roughly 10 minutes. I think I also do say that in my walkthrough as well. But again, yeah, if somebody has something they want to do to burn for a few minutes while we wait for this, or if anybody has any questions or
I have a question. So you're not a developer, but if a development team is going to implement the best practices, is it best done at the unit test level, integration test, or in parallel with QA?
Good question. I mean, a lot of the stuff I have tested has always been QA environments. I mean, in a perfect world, all of this would be designed at the very first level of development, but that'll never happen, right?
Well, I know a lot of guys rely on that for frameworks, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, with web apps and the whole stack, right? There's a lot of framework stuff to even, think about. Like the actual design of an application takes a very long time. And so when you're making things work for a customer and things that actually function, the last thing you're thinking about is security because you just want something to work, right? Yeah. And so that's where the kind of head pounding starts, is like, I don't care if this is not hashed or what. I just want to make sure it actually talks to the database, But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I've tested is usually oh, wow, it's up already. Nice. All right, that was the fastest time it's ever booted. 6 minutes. Look at that. All right. So I'm going to quickly add 1 hour here. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire part of this TryHackMe thing. I'm going to kind of walk through like how I would, if I was given this app, like off the fly, say like, hey, I have this thing in prod. Can you test this for me? I'm going to kind of follow that logic. I will kind of touch upon I'll probably pull some commands from my walkthrough just so I don't have to sit here and fumble with the syntax. But I say we will get going here. All right, so let me clear this up. Is that, you guys see that at all? Oops, that's not that. To see if I can make that a bit bigger, and I don't remember what is it really just right here? I really thought there was a hotkey for that, but apparently not. All right, we'll try one more time. Don't do that, please. Can you not do that? Thank you. All right, that's fine. Yeah, sure. Just hit apply, and we're gonna. Okay, I'll hit OK, and if it doesn't work, we'll just say screw it, and I'll find a better way to
Found a bug.
Yeah, apparently I found a bug, or something's wrong with my. Really? Yeah. I'm gonna keep that in mind though. It's so weird. Why does it do that?
I think the hotkeys were like listed under the view tab anyway.
They were too. I don't know, man. I don't know. This sort of a burner, whatever. All right. So all right, so I am VPN'd into the TryHackMe network. This would not work otherwise. And I think I also stated in there, but we're going to be editing our Etsy host file. You're probably going to do this a lot with other TryHackMe and Hack the Box challenges anyway. But this particular web app that we're going to be looking at, Gilgamesh, has a few virtual hosts, and we will not be able to access those unless we change our Etsy host file. One other thing, the actual Gilgamesh.com, I would refrain from going to that site. It's a little interesting, and it's like from 1990 something. So very weird. Don't go to the real Gilgamesh.com, please. Follow the editing of the Etsy hosts if you do this. Yeah, we're going to one more second. Is this mirrored? Please, did that work? Yes. Okay. So I don't have to keep looking up there. We're going to do this. Oh, please. All right, that works. Right. Okay. Awesome. So first we're going to edit our Etsy hosts, right? So let's go ahead and do this. And I am a nano guy. Yeah. All right. Let me actually grab the IP of this. So that's 10.10.25.238. 238. Gilgamesh.com. And we don't actually have to call it Gilgamesh.com. We can call it really, well, that's not true because the virtual host thing. But if this didn't have any extra little tidbits, we could technically call this whatever we wanted. All right, so that's saved. We are going to go ahead and open up a window here. And let's just go to Gilgamesh.com, see what happens. Awesome. So we get this fun little intro portal, keeping your factories up forever, right? Again, if I receive this kind of request like, hey, test our web app real quick, this is going to prod tomorrow, which definitely hasn't happened before. I'd be like, okay, well, first thing what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to see if I can access the site, right? Okay, we can. Awesome. Perfect. I already see there's a click to log in, click to register button. I don't know right now if maybe I need something special to register or, I don't have any creds. So right now we're just going to straight up go back to our terminal, and we're going to do what we call directory busting. So we're essentially going to spam a bunch of requests at random routes and see if we can get anything back, and to see if there's any valid directories or things that we can actually go through. I'm going to use, oh, sweet, I did keep it. So I'm going to use GoBuster here. I prefer it now because it actually allows us to change the HTTP request method. Usually directory busting is just me trying to get different directories. But we actually also want to post to different directories because a lot of people will secure the get ones. A lot of people forget to secure the post directories. So we're just going to have a get in the background there, and we're going to open another tab to do that exact same thing. Except we're going to change the method to post. And while those are going, right, we can kind of see right now automatically, we're like, oh, okay. So at some point, there's an admin portal, right? Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. So these are just, okay, yeah, sorry. GoBuster, directory busting. So this is just regular, so this is posting like an empty request, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so this is actually right here, this is the site we want to test, right, Gilgamesh.com, and this is the word list. So we're actually just spamming a bunch of different directories through a word list, right? So like /admin, /login, /bin was here, right? Just a bunch of different things to see if we can get any actual valid responses. And you see right here in our post, we get a /error, /login, /register. So all of those directories or all of those routes will take us post to those. Specifically /error looks interesting. As you can see, all the other ones, we get a 418, we get a 400, a 403, but /error gives us 500, as in, oh, that's a server error. So we were able to post to that, and it gave us a really large response. So there's probably something interesting in there. We'll look at that in a bit. We'll go back to our gets. Right. Okay. So it looks like we see an admin, we see login, logout, main, register. You're going to see a lot of, this just looks completely normal, right? We did see a login register page, right? There's probably some kind of admin panel. So we'll just go ahead and go back here and take a look back into the actual portal itself. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to register for something, right? Let's say name's Ben, my last name, Eldridge. I spell that wrong. Eldridge. We'll just do ben@ben.com, something silly like that. Phone number 567890. We'll just do password Ben. Screw it. Something really cheap. It even allows me to do that. So that's a finding on its own, technically. The fact that this site allows for a password of 3 characters is probably not good. Go ahead and submit that. Perfect. All right. So I guess our account was created. So let's just go ahead and try to log in. Ben@ben.com. Then password of Ben. Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, we logged in and we have a /main. So I guess that's fitting what we got right earlier, right? We did get a /main, so I guess that's where this takes us right now. So we get this fun little main page. You're currently not associated with any factory. Please submit a request here. Okay, well, perfect. So I guess we can continue to do things, but to actually, to function with anything other to function with anything else in this app, we're probably going to have to be associated with a factory. Well, I am obviously not associated with a factory. I'm not connected to this, right? I don't have any factories. I'm probably not an admin right now, right? We can even see down here, right? Click here to make a request. Click here for request status. Admin, click here. Huh, okay. Well, shoot. We're not an admin, right? Administrative authentication is required for admin console. All right, fine, right? We're not an admin yet. And I guess, right, we get to click here to log out. So let's just say, hey, we're going to request to be an admin. And immediately we're like, well, I don't know any factories, right? We don't actually get the chance to find or get a list of factories that are currently connected with this web app, right? So like, okay, what do I do? A lot of modern web apps are going to be utilizing what we call GraphQL servers. I guess this specifically Apollo. And Apollo is a really, really kind of cool kind of thing where we can utilize just a bunch of different APIs from us. We can send them into our Apollo server as GraphQL queries. That Apollo server is going to change and manage all of that data in the backend and just present us with data that specifically the user should see, and only the data the user should see, right? So we're going to be essentially utilizing GraphQL to make all these different API queries and specifically kind of parse and manipulate that data for whatever, I almost said promise, for whatever kind of function the user should be doing. And so a lot of GraphQL endpoints are either going to be at, example.com/GraphQL or api.example.com/GraphQL. That's sort of just how a lot of this is set up. That's not really insecure to have GraphQL.example.com, just because as you scale your environment, you're probably going to want those host names very simple just to have different functions running correctly. So in this instance, we don't really have evidence that this has a GraphQL endpoint, except for the fact that when we did /get, we didn't see any /API or /API/GraphQL or anything like that. We didn't see any kind of those routes. So let's go ahead and take just kind of a random guess. Sometimes that's what it's like. We'll go sudo /etc. Oh, forgot nano. That is probably not the right password. And let's just go ahead and put in another entry here. GraphQL.gilgamesh.com. Let's see if that works. So a lot of these Apollo server endpoints will respond in a very specific way if it exists. let's just see if graphql.gilgamesh.com will actually respond to me. Again, you could just start spamming and brute forcing subdomains with different hosts and web apps. Typically, that'll get you sort of the same kind of thing. Here is more of a guess than anything. It should respond to us. Please. Did I type that right? Yes, I did. Okay, well, they should, GraphQL endpoints will respond in a very specific way. They'll actually end up, if you just make an empty GET request, they'll talk to you and tell you the fact that, hey, we're blocking this request due to a CSRF error, which is actually perfect, because at that point, we do know that the GraphQL endpoint exists. Oh, perfect. Okay, I guess I just forgot the HTTP part. All right, so this is the exact message that you'll get if you successfully hit a GraphQL endpoint. Again, sometimes they're GraphQL.example, sometimes they're at the API.subdomain. It's just essentially telling you, hey, this is a bad request. We don't have a content type that you're giving us. This is an empty GET request. Of course, it's not going to have that. So right, all right, GraphQL endpoint is there. Perfect. What can we do with that? We can do a lot, right? So first off the bat, we know it actually exists, but we want to now make a query. And in this query, in this specific GraphQL query, which is a very specific JSON-like query, so it has a structure that looks exactly like JSON, we're going to make a query and test if this endpoint is going to require us to be authenticated or not. Hopefully, hopefully we're good, right? We did create an account, but, let's try to just do it without an access token, which we will get to in a second, by the way. And this is where I'm going to quickly copy paste a query of mine right here. And I am using Burp for this. So that should work. Okay, so this is the actual query we're going to be talking to the GraphQL endpoint with. You can just think of this as an API SQL database kind of thing. That's just, I guess, the easiest way to test this. And this is what we call the universal query, this specific string. This will always work, but this is going to also test, if we need to be authenticated into this endpoint first, it'll tell us like, hey, 401, right? You can't make queries without logging in. Let's go ahead and try this. Perfect. All right, so it looks like the GraphQL did respond to our universal query. We're actually just asking, hey, what is the type of your data? Or what is the type of the query I just made? Kind of convoluted, but essentially it's just saying, hey, yeah, you just asked for a query. Yep, checks out, perfect. So we were just able to talk to this without authentication, which by right, a lot of people will have GraphQL endpoints, but not actually implement that authorization or authentication properly, which we will touch a little bit later. But we're going to actually now go ahead and test for what we call introspection. So GraphQL introspection is essentially a very specific query that you can make to the endpoint that says, hey, tell me about your entire schema, which if you know anything about, so if you know anything about databases, kind of making sure the entire way your schema is structured is sort of a private thing, right? You don't want attackers to know exactly what kind of structure you have your database set to, right? You don't want, usually it's just a table with users and different login names and stuff like that, right? Typically it's easy to guess, but you still don't want that stuff publicly. GraphQL, on the other hand, will be like, yeah, if you don't turn off introspection, it'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you how the entire database is structured, right? I won't tell you the data that's in it, but I'll tell you how to get that data. And that's exactly what we're going to be asking it. So we just kind of queried exactly for how it's structured, right? So this is a very, you can tell some of this is copy and pasted because right now it looks like the default stuff, how to set up your Apollo server. There's always a book type in their database. But, you know, right, we kind of scroll down, we see the word factory, right? We're immediately like, oh, factory, that's what I need. I need a list of factories, right? So we can see that there's a type of factory. Looks like corp name is a field, right? So every factory probably has some kind of corporation name. Looks like there's lists of admins and hosts. Hosts have different IPs. There's is a live value, agent version is critical. Looks like every admin has a first name, last name, email, phone number, and a factory attached to it. Oh, perfect. We even see admin input, which that goes a little outside the scope of what we're doing, but there is another way to completely take down this app just using the GraphQL endpoint. If you're ever curious about learning GraphQL stuff. But immediately we see right here. All right, so here's a query. Factories. Factories is a query we can run that takes no arguments. And presumably, it's probably just going to give us a factory, right? The query name is just factories. It's probably going to give us all the factories. And because we don't need an argument for that, we can just straight up try that right now. We do see another one that says factory, and it requires a corp name, I guess. Yeah, some kind of string for a corp name. So there is a thing I could do there, but if I can just run an easier query, let's just go ahead and do that, right? So again, I'm just going to kind of cheat and copy paste here instead of me fumbling with all the fun syntax to paste that stuff. So we're going to make a query to this factories that we saw right over here, right? It doesn't need any arguments or parameters, right? So we don't need to set any variables. And this, so I know it looks a little funky, but this is just how GraphQL queries are made. I really wish I could, spend the time to explain that, but I'm not going to. So we're going to make a query to this factories. And I guess we want to know everything about these factories, right? So we see up here, the type of factory has a corp name field. So let's ask for that. We're going to ask for the corp name. And then we're also going to ask for the admins. And the admins have different fields as well, right? So we want the first name of the admin, the last name, and the email. And I guess we also want to see some hosts, right? Just to make sure this is working. So we want to pull the IP from each host as well, which should have been, yeah, right here. So let's just go ahead and run this query and see what happens. Oh, perfect. Look at that. So not only did the GraphQL endpoint allow us to make this query without authenticating, but it doesn't look like there was anything else stopping us, right? It wasn't requiring that it was, it wasn't making sure that this query was an internal only thing, right? Maybe it's only allowed to make this query from a certain IP, but nope, we were allowed to do it just fine. Awesome. So we got some factory names, right? We got Rise and Shine. We got Test. That's still in there. Oops. We got Gila. And we also have really technical xylophones. Also, who's that? That's a really cool admin. Ben.co at rtxylophones.com. Awesome. Look at that. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to use this corp name as for an example. Awesome. We have a corp name. Let's just go ahead and make a request to be one, right? Let's say like, hey, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and make a request. Here's my email address. I'm part of Really Technical Xylophones. I am part of them. Trust me. Oh, trust me. Awesome. All right. We're just going to straight up make that request. Hit submit. Okay, perfect. So this is the status of our request. You can see it here, /status. We have an email, factory name, our note. We have a status of waiting approval. Okay. Well, I don't want to wait forever. I highly doubt another admin is going to log in and approve this. So I want to be admin. How does this work? So another thing I really like to do when looking at how authentication works within a web app is just go ahead and take a look at the token you get when you log in. So immediately I'm going to tell you right now, this is a JWT token, Java or JSON web token, I should say. This is very, very obvious. And actually I'm going to expand this here. Oh, hopefully that's not sensitive data. I doubt, but so this is the little access token cookie that we were given in our browser storage. We can immediately tell this is a JSON web token, not because, well, out of two different things. First, this little first part right here, EYJHBG. That immediately tells me it's a JWT. And we also see 3 separate sections separated by periods. So here's the first session, here's one period, here's the second section, and did I not copy the whole thing? Unless I missed it. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't copy the whole thing, but yeah. Second section, period, and then third section. They're always broken up into 3 different sections. Just a really quick way to tell that it's a JWT. What I know about JWTs is they are very, very, very easy to break. So we're actually just going to straight up go to jwt.io. Now, JWTs are actually just base64 encoded. We can decode these and read whatever we want. We can't necessarily change them yet because they are signed by a signature, by a signing key most of the time. But we can go ahead and see the payload data, right? We see our first name, our last name, our association. We're not technically part of any factory yet, so that makes sense. Oh, bingo. What's that? Is admin. This happens a lot with JWTs. They'll always have some kind of trigger that's like, you know, is admin equal 0 or is admin equal 1? Maybe it won't be as obvious as is admin, but it does happen a lot. There are a lot of authorization schemes that utilize JWTs to determine if you are an admin or not. Just because it's very easy and it's very scalable. Right, so we could just, you know, change that to true. Yeah, we are an admin. And if we attempt to do that and we copy this right here, we go back to our session token, we replace it with the new one. We're like, yeah, let's go back. Okay, so it looks like that didn't work, right? Authentication error, check token. This is because the token is not validated. Every JWT is almost usually signed by a signing key. There's some math in there involved, but I'm not going to go into that. There are a few ways we could break these. JWTs specifically, we can just utilize what we call JWT cracker. Look at that. This is a open tool, right? This is not platform dependent, by the way. This is just built off of Node.js. So if you have Node on any platform, you can just npm install JWT cracker. And this will essentially just brute force the signing key for us. Now, a lot of times there are very long strings, but sometimes people just don't care and they'll just put in like 5 different random numbers, which has happened. So we're just going to straight up use JWT cracker here and copy our token, or well, we should probably do our original token here. Oh wait, no, we don't need to do that. Let's take this, copy, and then say, hey, yes. Oh, wrong clipboard. Yeah, break that for me, please. Awesome. All right, so that may take a few seconds here. And if this, for whatever reason, does not end up working, there is another method with this Gilgamesh thing that we can break this token with. We can actually just end up using an LFI vulnerability to grab the JWT signing key, which we will do in 15 seconds if this isn't done, because this is usually done in like 30 seconds, at least for this one here. We're going to hope, please.
The digital signature, how big is the key?
So the key can be as big as you want. Thing is, it is a digital signature, so it utilizes a signing key. If you're not using a private key public key pairing, the signing key is usually just a string. And yeah, it's not that hard. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back here because I do want to show this off real quick. I am going to log out real quick. Yeah, I know, invalid token. Because I changed that token, it's not going to validate properly, which is why that was not working. So we're going to just quickly grab a new token. Copy this. Yeah, I know. JWT cracker tech T. Paste this in. Okay, and that should take about 30 seconds. But if that doesn't work, I am just going to go ahead and go through the LFI vulnerability real quick and quickly barge through. Barge through this. Yeah, that should, again, Very, very small key for this example. But I have seen people just use no signing key. I have seen people just use a very simple name. And it's very, very easy to crack these, right? Obviously, it just takes a few seconds. And you, with JWT Cracker specifically, you can specify the alphabet too to really hone down on what you think the key actually might be. Oh, perfect. There we go. Awesome. So we found the key to validate it. RBTC. Perfect. 2 capitals in there. Just took a few seconds. 69. Was that? Oh wow, that's actually a lot of tries there. But yeah, awesome, perfect. So now we have the signing key. We can make that token say whatever we want now. So let's go back here. Let's paste that new one in. Let's say is admin. Yeah, we are admin. And we have the signing key now. So it has to listen to us, which should be RBTC. I don't know if you saw, but that does quickly change the encoded format. We're going to copy this right again. Replace our token with the newly forged one. Oh, perfect. We got into the admin panel. Go ahead. It is the same for every JWT token, which is why it's very important to make it very, very long and change it every so often, unless there's active sessions. So if the signing token gets changed while there's active sessions, those active sessions will no longer be validated because the signing key was changed.
You normally bleed off between systems.
Yeah, you would have to do that kind of lead off there. So awesome, perfect. We're now in the admin panel. We can approve our own request. We're going to do exactly that. Approved. Awesome. Now we are part of really technical xylophones. We're going to go back to main. Perfect. Look at that. We get access to all these fun little factory connected devices. We also get 2 little fun things right here. We get ping host and check error log. If we go ahead and check an error log right here, looks like we get some log data. This was the other method you could use to get the JWT key. A lot of projects will have a .env file, a .environment file, which will contain a lot of like secrets, maybe static variables, fun things like that. So we can actually, we record, actually we have it right here. So if you have Firefox, which is really, really nice, you can actually just edit and resend HTTP requests on the fly. So we see that there's a file name here. File name equals /logbroker/IP. So if we just do something funny, like /etsy/password, and send that, will it give us? Let's look at the response. Oh, perfect. Look at all that fun stuff. Awesome. So really cool LFI ability there. Like I said, if we just change that to .env, send another request, API port, Mongo URL, token key, RBTC. And that's where a lot of JWT signing keys are kept, either in the environment file, either hard-coded, which is why LFIs are really dangerous, and sometimes they're in the actual environment path, or excuse me, in the actual environment variables of the shell, which they should be, but you can't really do anything with an LFI there. Right, so we have our thing here, right? We are now part of the factory. I could stop there. The last thing I do want to do, though, to just touch upon what we were doing, the slide deck, and then I'll wrap up here. So we also have a ping host button. So we go ahead and click that. I guess we can see it's taking a little bit long, right? It's probably doing something of background. Supposedly, this is checking if the host is online, right? This is a factory connected network or something like that. In the cloud, the best idea. So we get actually a little fun little error message. Look at that. So we got a JSON response, code of 1 killed false, and then the command. So if you're new to this, this is automatically screaming command injection to me, right? We see a ping-4 or a ping-C4 and then an IP address, right? That's all it does. Perfect. Well, we can probably do other things too with that. If all it's taking is the IP address, in which we can actually validate that right here. If we go back to the request that was made, it looks like form data. There is a IP equals that IP. There's nothing more than that. So assuming that, input validation was never done correctly, we can probably make a request that does some really fun things with that. So I'm going to go back into a request builder real quick just to be able to show this a little bit better. Yes, well, we can do a lot more than just that. And I will stop after getting this rev shell right here. Let me again copy and paste my fun little post. I'm very glad I did this because it would take a very long time to write all that down. But we're going to make a post request to this specific route, right? It was doing to /check host. We will need our session token though, because it looks like it does check if you are logged in. So we are going to take that real quick. We're going to put our access token in there. What is my machine IP? It is that. Okay, let's just go ahead and do this real quick. My attacking machine IP. So what I'm essentially doing is running a is sending a request that is taking that check host. It's going to take that IP variable, but we're going to do what's called command injection. We're actually just going to put a semicolon right after that IP, and in Bash, right? If you put a semicolon and then another command, it's going to run that right after whatever it was doing previously. So we put in IRP, that looks fine. We are going to start our rev shell real quick. Starting that up. Let's go ahead and send this. That looks correct. And, right, so we know previously it does try to ping this. And then once it's done trying to ping that, it's going to run our Python reverse shell script, hopefully. If it doesn't, we'll get a fun response. Oh, look at that. Who am I? Oops. Awesome. We're G-admin. Yeah, awesome. So, okay, I guess you don't want to do that. Awesome. So, two things just happened there, right? Not only did we spawn a reverse shell, but we spawned a reverse shell as a user called G-admin. So a lot of people like to run their web apps as just like a root user. Don't do that, because if somebody can pop a shell, they are now root. I am also now a G-admin, and I can probably, actually, if I LSAL, so, right, all of these files, all of the web app files are owned by G-admin, meaning I have free range to do whatever I want with all those, because I have permissions to those. I will say, just real quickly, we'll get back on topic, but to actually privask here, I had a really fun day where somebody had a pseudo password in their history. So that is how we escalate here. There is a top of here, looks like they tried to run some kind of Python script that took a user and took a password. And so if we try to sudo with that password, we will eventually get root, excuse me. But yeah, also looks like they were doing some fun stuff on here. But yeah, that's the kind of demo. And right, so we got a reverse shell and we found a bunch of things from a really, really badly coded web app, right? And specifically with three major things, right? We broke into, we completely cracked that JWT signing key. I won't go into the semantics just because of time, sorry, but there are a few different JWT type tokens. There are some that are completely encrypted that we can't decode. However, those are very slow, and those are usually utilized for like federated environments, so like OpenID Connect kind of stuff. But there are also JWTs which are almost always used, which was the tokens we just saw. They are just base 64 encoded. We can easily decode them. We can't alter them without that signing key though. So that signing key, right? To actually secure these, you probably want to use RSA key pairs. And typically when this happens is, and this is very doable with JWTs, instead of a single signing key, you'll have a key pair, right? A private public. You'll sign these tokens with the private key, and you will validate the tokens with the public key. This is very, very helpful, right? You don't have a single like signing key signature. You have an actual like private public key pair. This is very, very useful, right? Nobody's going to really be able to brute force that. Thing is, this is sort of an issue when you want to scale very, very fast. RSA, right, is a very fast like encryption key generating kind of thing, but key generating function, but it still takes time to process that kind of data on the web app, especially in the back end if you're taking a bunch of requests at once. Also, like any kind of system that's validating tokens, any kind of route that validates tokens, that middleware will have to have access to the public key at some point, right? So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, it can be a bump in the road when you're trying to scale things very fast. If you are utilizing that single signing key, that HMAC function, make sure it's really long and randomly generated, multi-characters, please, and make sure you rotate those frequently. There are obviously issues doing that, right? You can't have a very specific, it might take some downtime, right? And again, if you change that key, all of the previous sessions are now null and void. So there's some things with that, but if you do utilize HMAC from the very beginning, make it very complicated, because if that gets broken, that's not good. Please. All right, so securing your GraphQL endpoint, the two ways, right? Authentication and authorization. You want to make sure only authenticated users can access that endpoint, and you want to make sure that they are allowed to be able, or should they be able to access that query, right? So we can go query by query. We can specify, hey, this specific GraphQL query only admin users can do, right? And we're going to authenticate that via this, or hey, only public users can make these kinds of queries. And there's a lot of really cool things you can do with those servers to utilize that. Also, disabling the playground and landing page. I was going to keep it on just to kind of show an example, but I did turn it off for this, for Gilgamesh. Those are on by default. If you just go to like graphql.x.com, whatever, chances are people left the playground / landing page on. Those are essentially like dev tools that give you the power of introspection for free. So really, really cool stuff. On that topic, disable introspection, right? That query that said, hey, how are you made? Please don't allow that. It's a very, very simple parameter when you're setting up your Apollo server. Disable introspection. Introspection equals false. That's all you got to do. So yeah, please disable that. You don't want people to know the schema. Also, masking any potential errors. I didn't show it here, but there's certain ways you can generate errors from the GraphQL endpoint, and that will actually tell you more data about the schema than you know. It also give you, sometimes it'll give you like stack traces. It'll actually give you the path of the executable, or excuse me, the path of the web app. A lot of fun things you can generate with errors. There are a lot of ways you can change the default errors when setting up your GraphQL server as well. Also, just monitoring for any anomalous behavior, utilizing WAFs, stuff like that. Just ensuring that, hey, you probably don't want people just brute forcing these. But good luck with that. So even with introspection disabled, GraphQL, or excuse me, specifically Apollo server, has a really, really cool function. This is actually one of my bug bounties. You'll have to patch this yourself, unfortunately. But there was a specific vendor I was testing that didn't patch this out. This is on by default. You can't change this. This is not an option. You literally have to go into the code and turn off suggestive queries. But essentially what you can do is you can mass send different random field names and just honestly, just a bunch of word list items into a GraphQL endpoint. And it'll tell you, hey, I don't have that. Did you mean this? Yeah, of course I meant that. So even if introspection is disabled, I can figure out your entire schema if I have enough time. So yeah, unfortunately, you have to account for that no matter what. And of course, proper input validation. That was that command injection, right? If they, hopefully in the future, they will validate that, but you probably don't want to have a semicolon where an IP should be, right? Never trust anybody. If user data comes in, always clean it, always validate it. I say clean, but technically validation is better than any sanitization. Sometimes user input has to have special characters. Sometimes there's really convoluted things. That's why you validate instead of sanitizing, right? And what I mean by validate, actually this photo right here even helps, right? You want to use some kind of middleware function to be like, hey, an email is usually this at this dot this. We're going to validate that. We're going to validate that string, right? Is it this? Is there an at symbol? Yes. Is there this dot this? Yes, that's perfect. There's probably not going to be a colon or a comma in a email. So we want to make sure we validate that. And of course, always validate on the server side, not the client side. It doesn't matter. You can have validation on the client side. I don't care. Just it's null and void. Always server side. I can bypass any client stuff like that. Anybody can. And of course, you know, along with that, escaping dangerous characters when you output something to a user on the browser, right? You want to make sure that if you have to render like greater than, less than signs or ampersands, you want to make sure you're HTML escaping that. And some do that automatically, but you want to make sure that it's not actually rendering the greater than, less than sign. You want to give it some kind of other Unicode character to do that. But yeah, that's the long-winded of that. Thank you for sticking with me. That's that. Any questions? Yes. Sorry, I don't know who was first.
Not a question, but another attack vector for JWT is looking for injections. You can make them do the hard work of encoding, signing your stuff if you look for state changes and that they're taking user inputs and not directly into their backend and then encoding it into their JWT.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up.
You get it? So, Ben, good question. How do you keep up to date on all the changes happening?
Good question. I don't. That's my job, thankfully. Right, like I get a lot of freedom and time to play. But honestly, a lot of that stuff is like just reliant on. I don't really want to call it threat hunting, but like a lot of like a lot of news sites will be like, oh, massive data breach and this. And if you dig deep enough, eventually they'll actually give you the source or like the actual information. Unfortunately, it's all about clicks these days, but you will get to that point where you get to kind of utilize and you get to, I would suggest reading actual write-ups about how these breaches and stuff happen, because that'll tell you a lot about that kind of design of like, hey, I guess I'm going to avoid doing that, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's a portable story.
I heard that, but I haven't looked into that. Yeah, no.
Cybersecurity companies out there with defensive software and everything else. And so they're not cheap.
Yeah.
And it's always this game of who's actually going to be able to have this protection of defense. But then it always gets cracked and they have a hack in, so they got to have fun.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's never like a final end game of hopefully extra secure.
I wish.
It's like, how in the world do you guys continue to develop the strategies and also the concepts in order to continue to get ahead of the game?
Yeah.
And there's all these software programs that are out there to help provide defenses.
So just a couple of comments on that. Yeah. Usually what gets people is the complicated stuff, the simple stuff we know. I typically don't care about the process of what the audit do. I will find something. I think something 2 months ago or whatever. So take that sort of thing seriously and you'll cover your basics. It's tedious and it's hard to see, but if you take this thing seriously, you get ahead of the game from both.
Yeah.
And both sides are also constantly changing. I mean, JWTs are the current hotness, but in 10 years, you'll be like, oh, you're still using JWTs?
Exactly.
Like, you used to be using this new thing that nobody has been using for months.
Subcontractors.
Yeah,
it's working as I'm saying today. It's working.
A lot of guys that are supplying all these different suppliers, they're not access to the orders and everything else. Interconnected systems, platforms. But you're into security for the on the hacking side. Yeah. Of course, now like you can have security if you want. If someone hacking some contractors into their system, they have access to yours. Defending against that,
and that's where you have to have good perimeter security.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that a little bit further and just say, don't trust the network.
Yeah.
Full stop, even if they're on the network, don't trust it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I work in the attack on the network. So like, if I was like, why would I trust a network that is like the wireless network or whatever that has like all of our users connecting? It's like, why would I trust my users any more than anybody on the internet? Like it's a bring your own device type of environment. Like, and no matter what kind of environment it is or how much you try and lock it down, you're gonna have people putting their own devices on them. Yeah. And so like just don't trust the network. You shouldn't be trusting devices at the very least. Like it's really, really hard to know what you're actually doing, short of like TLS. And so at that point, you're not trusting the network, you're trusting the entity that you go back and then get you 90%.
Yeah, nothing perimeter too much. And for Virginia Tech, you know, we're so open. There's people in there all the time. Then once they're in, like, oh, I can do all this stuff because people are trusting that. Oh, it's the firewall. You know, it's like, yeah, if you leave your front door open, you still lock up the door. You know, don't rely on the your exterior house. Everything inside needs to be secure from somebody inside as well.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just tried to see if I could get my webcam going. I guess not. That's okay. So my name's Tweaks. I'm going to be presenting. If I can get out of this shell I'm in. Absolute paths matter. You guys watching me up there?
Hi.
Okay.
Projecting.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, my presentation is so I'm an electrical engineer. I don't have an about me slide. So work at Virginia Tech, IT, cybersecurity, cloud stuff. Traditionally a sysadmin from Rackspace for 17 years. Saw a lot of compromised systems there, had a lot of fun. I got to do security, but didn't officially wear a security hat. So patch 5,000 servers at the same time. That's a lot of fun. So that kind of got pulled into Virginia Tech a few years ago, working at CyberRange, and I get to play with this stuff now and write capture the flag challenges and learn stuff. I love this because I got a flipper a few months ago, and no one in my work had played with them yet. So I started playing with it, and I really, really wanted to learn NFC and RFID. I knew some RFID because I'd done some stuff in the UHF range, but I hadn't done low frequency or high frequency wireless hacking. And I'm really concerned about how credit card industry and banks are implementing near field communications. I just don't trust anybody. And I'm glad I looked into it because it's really bad. So I wanted to share some of what I learned. I'm still learning. I found with RFID, it's a deep rabbit hole. Depends how deep you want to go. Some levels I just said, okay, I'm not going there. But I just want to learn enough to at least share a little bit with you guys on some of the do's and don'ts and best practices. So what we're going to be talking about is types of RFID you'll hear me say LF, it's low frequency. Low frequency is anything between 30 kilohertz and 300 megahertz. And then high frequency is 300 megahertz and 3 gigahertz. I think that's right. No. LF, HF to 3,300, and then UHF is 300 to 3 gig. That's right. So all we're dealing with is the low frequency stuff. This is prox cards. This is picture of this thing here. So they call them HID. Some people call them HID or proximity cards. Also the little dongles, the little fobs that people have. Sometimes they put them on livestock and stuff like that. So it's really low quality, low security. There's no security. So for 40 to 60 bit serial number, no encryption. You ask it, it spits out its serial number. So it's really, really basic. Shouldn't be using it for door access, but in the early 2000s, that's all they had. So in the 90s and 2000s, that's all they had. So it was cool. It's high tech. It must be secure. And then we're also going to be talking about HF. This 13.56 megahertz cards. These are also passive. These are all passive cards. So you get these little
these little dongles and these little pocket cards and lanyards and stuff that you guys use to get into your buildings. These are all passive. The first one we're going to talk about is the MeFair Classic 1K cards. These have basic serial number with some basic, really outdated, cracked proprietary encryption called Crypto 1 that was cracked back in like 2006, I think, published in 2007, and people are still using it. So it's a nightmare. It's often used in cheap hotel room cards, bus and subway cards, low security access. Shouldn't be using it for security access, but people do. So you'll typically see it there. And then we're also going to talk about MeFair DesFire cards. These are a little bit higher grade. These are typically using AES encryption, and the protocols for version 2 and version 3 have not been cracked yet. Version 1 has been, so you won't hear me talking about that one too much. No one really uses it anymore. And then credit cards, which is a subset of RFID. People call it NFC or near field communication. That's the stuff that your tap to pay, your phones have, and your credit card that has a little symbol on it. You can tap it and pay. So some of that is good and uses kind of one-time tokens for payments, and other forms of that are really bad that just blast your credit card number out into the ether. So we're going to talk about that and so show what it looks like. So the method of attacks, so card access cloning, also called butt scanning. The thing with prox cards, the range is 1 to 2 feet. So anyone with an employee badge with a door badge, you can pretty much walk by them and beep, and you got their information. We'll show that how that works here in a second. Common attack tools are typically Flipper Zero, like I have here tonight, hooked up. Show you guys what that looks like. For either cloning or bricking. You can also brick these devices if you write the wrong information to them. Another one is the older way before people had flippers were these little handheld card copiers. $20 on Amazon, $10 direct from China. So really cheap. And then the way I got into it was an Arduino with a little wire antenna. I bought 3 of them and I never hooked them up. I just bought the Flipper Zero. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, what kind of cards are they using? Yeah, they kind of deserve that. I mean, they no, really. Sure. Well, once they lose a couple of cars, they may get funding. I'm curious, did your class give any recommendations after you showed them the technology and what the vulnerabilities were? Yeah. Are you a student here? You need to connect with some of these pen test guys. They can really help you out a lot. Oh yeah. Well, I have some information for you on that regard. RFID wallets don't work for all things, and so we're going to get into the different frequencies. And even my RFID wallet that does work, it doesn't work at this angle. So this is a good wallet, and it's good for the things I have in it, but the zipper is not protected. So as I was thinking on the way over here, there's no silver bullet. And the deeper you dig into the devil in the details, the more you realize what's considered safe is not really safe. And that's what these guys are doing, right? They're doing pen testing on websites. I'm doing pen testing on we're doing RF stuff. So we'll kind of get into that. But I'm interested to hear about some of your recommendations you're going to make to them. Yeah. So yeah, just education is where it starts, definitely. So butt scanning, what I termed it. Some other people have different names for it. But typically, the people wearing the HID badges or prox badges on the lanyard is the typical place you'd be able to walk through a smoke break area and collect a lot of data.
So defending against these types of attacks, some of the defense against them, don't use 125 kilohertz prox cards for anything high security. So cop cars, yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm thinking hotel rooms and maybe server rooms, but cop cars with shotguns, and yeah, that's kind of important. One thing you can do here is switch from prox cards up to HF Mether cards, and there's a couple different levels there. You can do the basic Mether card, which are just these little like hotel cards. That's what they use in hotels, basically. They're a few cents each, just a little more expensive than the prox cards, and one step, and they have some basic encryption. And I tell people, even though the encryption's cracked, you can encode the data you put on it. So there's no reason you can't have a private key and XOR everything you write to the card. So just because the card's insecure, unless you're worried, you're worried about people cloning it. That's the other issue we're going to get into tonight too. I'll give a demonstration of cloning. If you're still worried about that, if you have more secure applications, you need to go up another level to what's called the DESFire cards. These are a little bit more expensive. This is typically your employee ID card. That's what they use at Virginia Tech for employee ID cards. And it took me a while to kind of figure out, who do I talk to about this and what frequencies are they using. And I got my flipper and started doing some discovery and found, okay, this is a fairly secure card. So I'm not going to have an easy time of cloning. Yeah. DESFire. It's called that because they originally used triple DES. They don't anymore. So on the encryption side, they allow you to use DES or AES. So yeah, you're not going to use DES. So, and I first did the same thing. I'm like, how's this more secure? So another way to mitigate against these is shielding. The shielding, like I said before, you can't use these typical shield cards with these, and you can't use wallets, RFID proof wallets. They typically do not shield. What you need to shield at this frequency, the frequencies of these things are like a block of conductive aluminum or other conductive surface that'll take the incoming energy wave and turn it into small eddies of electricity that will just turn to heat. So that's what's going on. And typically the card, if this was a prox card, would be slapped up against it. You can't read it at that point. Okay. And I did try aluminum foil. I tested the prox cards against aluminum foil, and it's a 50-50, not very reliable. So you definitely want metal backing, and that's what these badges are here. These are really great if you can't afford to swap out all the card readers, in the entire department and upgrade to DESFire cards. You can buy these. They cost $5 each, and they're called a squeeze and scan. So they're rock solid, secure until you squeeze it and it comes away from the body of the metal. So was the question?
Yeah, so these are passive devices that have a little wire antenna built into them. So any of them have switches? You'd be able to disconnect the antenna, wouldn't you?
No, I was actually going to do that in my own bank card because I get really nervous about that kind of stuff until I did some more research. But then I saw most of the time I'm handing to the lady in the drive-through, and so I'm not gonna say you need to touch these two wires together, and it's not gonna. And then I put it in an ATM, and he goes, and I can't get it back. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna create my own nightmare here. So, but yes, that's typically people that really want to disable them will drill a hole through the antenna. You can hold it up to a very bright light, see the antenna, drill the hole. Some people put them in the microwave. That's stupid because that kills the EMV chip. You don't want to do that. That would cost money. Nobody cares. Nobody cares until you get hacked and they just send you another card. So that's reality, unfortunately. So that's upgrading or shielding are the two defensive and mitigation for this. Like I said, you can't block RFID on these with I don't think I have time to give a full demo, but I would have shown me scanning right through one of these DES cards, right through the shielding here, and through my. I'm going to go and show my wallet. Let me go ahead and. This is so this is the GUI to my flipper. So that's it's a little what's the little digital game called? Tamagotchi. It's a Tamagotchi. He's the more you play with him and scan things and hack things, the happier he is. Let's see. We're gonna scan. So we're gonna scan. This is one of my only prox card. This is a double antenna system, so I can write to these, change the serial numbers, and to both low and high frequencies. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I'll go and read it. So I'm going to do 125 kilohertz, read, bring it up, and there's the card number 6548. I'm going to put it in aluminum foil, which should block it because I've got it kind of double layered here. So aluminum foil you can use. And it's pretty solid there. Now putting it on a solid block of my own design isn't that reliable. It doesn't seem. So I would use the commercial product if you're going to do that. So on this one, I get like a 50-50 chance. So it's actually working. So if I take that away, as soon as it does ASK, it'll get it. There it is. So it got it there. So that's just a quick example of that. But if I were to put this in my RFID wallet, let's see, pick this card out. You guys can't see this, but I'll slip this in here. And this wallet's pretty good. I've tested it. Exit, read. There you go, read right through the wallet. So that's proves that on the low frequency side, these wallets don't really do you any good. I'll show you in a minute how the HF, for HF, they're very good. Yeah. They're magnetically coupled, so it can actually, depending on the reader can be a multi-device reader or a single device reader. If it's a single device, they'll interfere. If it's a multi-device, it can read multiples at once. Some readers can read hundreds of IDs at a time. That's why they use them in stocking and inventory. They go, they scan entire rows of stuff. So, good question. The expensive readers do that. Cheap ones don't. All right.
The Q charging and the weak charge, the magnetic mag charge.
Yeah.
If you take apart the backside of one of those and keep that
I don't know. I don't do wireless charging. I know there's a couple of inductive antennas, but those are low frequency. They're not typically doing this data. This data rates are up in the kilobit range. So I don't know. If I was an engineer, I would design a charge system that did both NFC and with one antenna. But I don't know. I'm not sure about the mechanics of those because I tend to buy cheap phones. All right, so defending against, we talked about what to do there. So real quick, so for low frequency, you can't use the stuff at the top there. You can use aluminum foil. So people say foil hats don't work. That's wrong. You can put it on your head and put the foil hat on, you're good to go. For bad shields, I really like those squeeze the scans. I hadn't seen those till I did this research, and I was like, that's a perfect solution because there's another kind that's got a magnet on it where you put it up your chest, it goes junk. And it's like, oh, that's even cooler. And it's got the squeeze the scan built in too. So you got the website I referenced here. So that website, and they've got all these really cool badges. But the one with the magnet, it just sucks it to your chest. It's very, very cool. Yeah, some other question. Yes, that's exactly what I'm going over. The first ones I just touched on were LF. That's the prox cards, the really cheap ones that they're typically like thick clamshell style, and they have typically a lanyard hole on the top, and you have the big black, dark brown scanners that beep. That's the kind I'm talking about there. I don't have a picture of the scanner here, but you guys have all seen them. They probably have them in this building. For the LF, yes. For the low frequency, these low frequency badges. But that look just like hotel cards. You can't visually tell the difference between a low frequency and a high frequency. They look exactly the same, unless you're talking about the HID door cards. They're thick. They tend to be like the thickness of 2 or 3 credit cards. Yeah. Huh? I did, and I read right through it.
Yes, it did. Yeah. Then that's why this slide here, this foil, good. So for low frequency foil, and this is a metal wallet. Mine's not metal. I may get one now. Metal wallets are good, but you can't shove a bunch of crap in them. So like I can mine. But yeah, foil. If you wanted to keep an HF badge in your wallet, just wrap it in foil. You're good to go. All right. I need to move along because I'm behind. So method of 13 megahertz attacks. So you can card scan. You can't butt scan anymore, but you can do this close scanning between 0 to 2 inches. They say technically it's 0 to 4 inches, but I don't see any card readers I've ever seen, NFC readers, that are very good after 2 inches. So close scanning 1 to 2 inches. MF Classic cards, which is the hotel card style cards, they're less than $1 each. They're really cheap. They can be fairly easily cloned depending on their implementation. Most people, just like home routers, they leave default passwords. If they have hotel software out of the box, they don't change any of the keys, they've probably got vulnerable keys. Flipper's got 30,000 key dictionary built into it. You can upload your own key dictionaries for the most common keys that are out there in the industry, and you can crack most of the keys in most of the hotels in America. And that one, these are closer scan, or these are closer scanners. I'd say these are good out. The hotel room cards are usually good out to about 4 inches. NFC, the tap to pay is 0 to 2 inches. So hotel room is very much susceptible to butt scan, but they have to get kind of uncomfortably close. So just be aware. Don't let people in an elevator. Perfect environment. Yeah. Well, I'll show you. Let's do it. Here's my hotel card. So this one's Country Inn and Suites. I was just there recently. Let me back out. Let me show you. You guys want to see this cool interface, right? So NFC, now this is 125 kilohertz HF versus NFC, which is high frequency, 13 megahertz. So I'm going to scan it with this cheap little sleeve I got off Amazon. Someone said, "Oh, those are a hoax, aren't they? If there's a scam," I'm like, "No, they're not. They actually work very well." Oh, cancel. So there you go. I'm scanning, getting nothing. As soon as I pull this out, just halfway, boom, got it. All right, so that's my hotel card. Now I can do more. I can say over here and say, okay, I want to save this data, or I want to look at the data. Okay, it's a MeFair Classic. That's the ISO, the UID. The UIDs are either 4-bit or 4-byte or 7-byte. It's a 4-byte. And I can go to more information and get a hex dump of all the data on the card. Now this is okay, but it's not really useful as a hex dump because I can't see any ASCII and you can't do anything useful here. But you can also get a really cool little app for your phone called, let's see, I'm sure I get the right app. I got several of them installed. The one I really like is MeFair Classic. MeFair Classic allows you to do a hex dump, display to ASCII, look at the encryption keys, and write to what's called magic cards. The data, I can't really show this visually, but the data is on a 1K card is 16 blocks of 64 bytes. 16 times 64 is a K. 1024. So the first block is non-writable. It's got the UID, the serial number, and the encryption keys. So you can't clone them. Well, you order these UID cards or magic cards from Japan or China or wherever, and that's what I'm talking about here. People will typically get a flipper and a few magic UID cards, which are, instead of like 50 cents each, they're like $1 each. And then we can go ahead and start cloning. So here's my blank magic MeFair 1K 4 UID cards. So I'll go ahead and I'll do this on the flipper so you guys can see it on the screen. So that was what I just read. I'll go ahead and you can emulate too. So I can read someone's card, then just go to the room and emulate it, and you hit emulate and it transmits its RF brain powers.
You can save it.
Yes.
And so I can save it, give it random names. I'm not going to save it because I'm going to load one. So I'll do a saved. I'll go here to my country in 1, country in 2, country in. I did this, the hex on it is 0655. So I'm going to do that one. I'll do that. I can emulate it or write it. Actually, I need to go to a good different app for this. I'm sorry. Let me back out of this. Go to applications, games, GPIO, media, NFC. FC Magic. Here we go. Here's my magic card. Check magic tag. Make sure it is legit. Yes, it's detected. It's good. Okay, I want to write that card. Forgot to show you this before. That card started with the hex value 0655. So I'm going to write that, the country in card. Continue, risky operation. You can brick the card. Oh no. Okay, success. I'm going to back out. Go down here to NFC. Read. And there it is. Now it has 0655. So now it has it's been cloned, including block 0, which you are not supposed to be able to do. They also have that for the MeFair 1K cards, the MeFair 4K cards, and some other cards too. But I'm just kind of getting into that, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money. So, yeah. You can put whatever you want to on it. Look at this. I did
It's typically encoded, and
what's in hex?
Well, yeah, but the actual
Binary
for each card, right? Like this card can only access room, blah blah blah. That information is usually encoded with some.
They have different features in the different card sets. The MeFairs, they can have what's called applications, which is a memory pointer to a different area of the card that does different things. So you can have multiple things to do or multiple things to store on a card. So,
but it's pretty easy that once you get the information, you figure out what it goes to, or is it just...
No. The room isn't someone's data; it's the hotel's database. Yeah, so it doesn't. There's typically nothing stored on these hotel cards, but if you have a bank card, not a bank card, but like a meal card or a student, hokey card with your balance on it, sometimes they'll store some things in there, such as your vitals, some PII sometimes, your name. I don't think they'll put your social on it. It's typically in the back end because everyone's sensitive about that now. But so they have that option. But most people prefer to store it in the database and just use it. So this is the same technology you use at the arcade when you're charging your card and you're putting the money's not going on the card, the money's going in the database.
If someone wanted to access the room, you wanted to access the room now, you could with that card.
Yes.
You just have to figure out what room it is.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you go to the front desk and tell them yeah.
So if you can read the card and you write really, why can't you just use either your 0 or your phone anyway card? Writing.
You can. Yeah. So that application I showed you on my Android phone, by the way, you can't do any of this on an iPhone. iPhone API limits you to only reading 2 very minimal types of things, and one of them is a credit card, and then nothing else, like maybe one other thing. You can't do what I've done here tonight so far. Let me get going. So let me get through this. So DesFire is the next step up from these MeFair hotel cards, these MeFair classic 1K cards that we just cloned. You can't clone DesFire cards. The algorithm hasn't been cracked yet. AES is pretty secure, so that's probably not achievable anytime soon unless someone figures out a flaw in the protocol, which is very complicated. That thing's got a chip on it you actually talk to and exchange data with. So it's anything that's complicated is probably broken at some level. So now NFC credit cards. Let's do this. This is fun. So this is my Hokey card. So I like to show people that my wallet is actually working for me. I'm gonna go to read. So the little plastic shield in the front is actually preventing the reading. If I pull it out a little bit, I get it. So you can have ID card that shows you your picture like your driver's license, but it's still secure. But the further it pokes out, the higher the risk is. I will say that. Credit card. I'm not going to use my live credit cards, of course, but I have here a dead credit card.
It was perfect for this. Oh, it's in this shield. This is a wallet that actually works. So this is kind of like two plates of steel with some carbon fiber paint on it, and credit card is inside it. So this one works pretty well. I want you guys to see this though, what this looks like. This is what shocked me when I first time I scanned this thing. So exit, read, rock solid, nothing. Pull it out, push it out the other way. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch. I'll split all the way out. There we go. MasterCard, number, expiration date. So this is one of the fallback modes that these cards, you go take pictures, it's expired. That these cards have a couple different modes. They have this tokenized mode, which is fine. I think there's like two acronyms, a PAD number and a PAD, something like that. One, this is your real credit card number. When you do the tokenized, it gives a one-time use credit card number and expiration date combination. Okay, so butt scanning in a non-protected wallet, you can butt scan and get this information out. Now people say, oh well, it doesn't matter. You don't have their name. You don't have you know, their secret code on the back. Well, I did this and went out to Amazon, and look, all I need on Amazon is a credit card and the name and the expiration date. So if you can butt scan someone and get their name, you can use their credit card on Amazon. So that is a big deal. And some people said, oh no, it's not a big deal. There are fewer and fewer websites that allow you to transact without the CV, what's it called? Yeah, the CVV number on the back. Amazon is not one of them. That's a pretty damn big loophole. So, and I'm sure some of the Chinese sites allow it too. So,
are you still have more zip code requests as well?
Once in a while, they seem to good security outfits seem to randomize what they ask for, so you don't know what you need until they ask you. So that's actually a pretty good practice. But still, that's you know, that's a great pile of shit. So you don't want this kind of information getting off your person without your knowledge. So again, real quick, for the HF 35 megahertz cards, which includes credit cards and the MeFair line of things, all of these things will work. Taking the classic cards, upgrading them to Desfire cards. Everything else, including the MeFair cards and the NFC credit cards, you can shield them with these. Storage at least 6 inches within a backpack is okay in a crisis. If you're somewhere where you need to do it, you're really concerned about getting swiped, you just got a gift card, you want to get it home securely, stick it in the middle of your book bag. Most people are not going to be able to scan unless they're like pushing up on you. So on a subway, people may be pushing up against you. That's a really good place to get scanned. Public transit. So yeah. We're 8:30. There's two inside the flipper.
Yeah, like if you wanted to take the scanner out of flipper.
There's two different antennas inside flipper. One is the UHF antenna, which is a spirally thing you can't really pull out. You could put a BNC connector on it and make something if you wanted to. But these are down in the UHF range, which are using that flat antenna on the bottom that's glued to the bottom inside case of the flipper.
So could somebody take that?
But yes, to answer your question, people will take
subway
kind of
thing that you have to
the HF LF is more susceptible to that, reading at a distance. There are some high gain antennas you can get in the UHF range that I've read out to 12 feet.
Yeah, something that we actually do for like the team is we take the like HID readers that are like kind of like next to garages that have like very long like scan range. We'll take them and we just like package up like materials inside the reader and we'll put it in like a
Oh.
backpack.
Yes.
And it I think it's good maybe between like 3 to 6 feet.
Yeah.
If you have good clearance, you have to calibrate
The garage doors, Tesla cars, most cars are all using the 433 megahertz, which is above what we're talking about here. But they're typically really
I'm
bad
talking about
technology.
like the badged entry into like parking structure.
Oh,
Those
okay.
big like square.
Yeah, the
readers.
patch antennas readers. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're good at about 12 feet.
Yeah, so like we will take those, like we'll buy them. They're like $250 on eBay or something.
Yep.
And we will like outfit them with like a long range.
Are you doing UHF or HF like this?
This is specifically like
900?
HID, like the like 26-bit like cards. But yeah, like you can read like somewhere between like 3 to 6 feet.
So like the HID cards, then you're
Yeah.
talking about. Oh wow, yeah.
Another
Yeah. Without an amplified antenna, you're 1 to 2 feet, but with an amplified antenna, you're going to be able to probably triple that. Yeah.
This is just like an extra like fun little attack, but we actually have these things called ESP keys, which are these like little tiny like ESP like chips. They have like little punch down connectors, and what we'll do is we'll actually just like pull a reader off the wall next to a door, and we'll punch down the wires inside the reader onto this device, put the reader back on, and you can just replay cards, like because it's just bits on like a wire.
Yep.
So you just replay like those bits.
Some gas station skimmers have taken that approach, so that you can pull and push all you want on the reader. They've actually got into it and then put a serial read device that then transmits out over Wi-Fi to them. And they have a harvester and a Raspberry Pi they stuck on the side of the 7-Eleven, for example. So, yeah. So there's a lot to be afraid of. But on the good side, that's the stuff that you can use to protect the HF stuff. And so wrapping things up, low security, low frequency is low cost. Low cost is low security. Spend the extra money on either a shielded lanyard badge or upgrade to a better technology. On the medium security side, you have the HF MeFair Classic 1Ks. Has some encryption. You can add more encryption on top of that if you are working with the hotel and have access to configure their point of sale system, or if you have your own business, add your own additional XOR encryption in the actual data fields if you're storing important information on the cards. Cheaper paper shields do work at that level, so that's really great. These things, you like literally like a few bucks for a dozen of these little things. The good ones have are like shiny on the inside, shiny aluminum foil, kind of like you'd see in a microwave hot pocket. So that's something to look for. By the way, passports and passport cards also use the same technology. Passports actually have an RFID protection in the sleeves now, but the actual passport cards are wide open. I haven't actually sniffed them yet, but you need to check that out. And then for high security, MeFair DesFire. If you're implementing your own solution that's going to be doing things for secure ID cards, access controls, micropayments, you need to switch to this better technology. So, or convince your people you need to. All the references are there. Any questions? Any other questions? Yeah. What's that? No, if someone emulates a reader, which, by the way, this can emulate a reader, so you can present a fake purchase. That is an attack. I'm not quite 100% how it works yet, but yeah, you can do that. Yeah. You get a comment? You want to show us that? On the, what was the other part of that question? The credit card stuff. I'm working on 4 hours of sleep here, so forgive me. So yeah, in a nutshell, on the credit card stuff, protect your stuff until the credit cards get rid of the mag strip. I think the reason they release the credit card number and the expiration date is because that's what's encoded on the mag strip, actually along with your name. And that it's the same readers. They're in the process of about to go to pin plus chip plus pin, or they're about to start enforcing that.
and getting away from the mag strips altogether. Because mag strips are a giant loophole. Right now, if someone can swipe it, they can swipe it in their pocket, like what they're getting your burger, give it back to you, and then go home and make their own card, their own mag strip cards. So that's another vector. That's probably the biggest hole in these right now. Is not the RF. Well, the RF is big too. So the RF releasing your actual credit card number and the mag strip are the two remaining things that need to be looped up before these are secure. Yeah.
What is MeFair Plus?
There's about a dozen different versions of MeFair. They have MeFair Plus, MeFair Lite. I think MeFair Plus is the regular MeFair Classic plus some different encryption stuff, maybe. I was just reading about that, but the MeFair Lite, MeFair, there's about 3 or 4 others too that they were selling at one point. Now they've transitioned to something else. So they're trying to keep the market share. After in 2006, when their crypto one algorithm was made public domain, they lost a lot of market share. So they've been doing all kinds of stuff to try to get back to that because not everyone can afford the MeFair DesFire cards. So they're basically cheap alternatives to going full blown DesFire. So, but most readers will read either. If you can read the MeFair Classic, you can typically with a firmware update read the MeFair DesFires also. Yeah.
You know anything about biochips?
A little bit, yeah. I got a bunch of friends that put them in their skin and open their cars and junk. It's stupid as hell, but they actually create tumor tissue around the RFID element. It's stupid to do, but yeah. Yeah, and it's not cancerous, but it's still a tumor. So I don't think it's worth it, but yeah, people do implants. I actually got some chips for my pets. I was doing a pet chip CTF challenge. So I said, we've stolen some dogs, track them down. And I was very tempted of chipping my children and my dog, but I found out about the cancer and I was like, yeah, I may still chip the dog, but not my kids.
I have to say your photos are very.
I made that.
Yeah, in the Voldemort, that was perfect.
Oh, did it have the Voldemort?
Yeah.
With the laptop? Yeah, isn't that cool? Anyway. Yeah.
So I actually used the flipper to locate the owner of a lost dog.
Yes.
Yeah, like
yeah.
It's rad.
That's
like,
for
it's not just for stealing cards. It's also
no, it's not.
Like,
it's not
humanitarian stuff out there.
Whatever you need to tell yourself, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
For me, I'm doing research.
Yeah.
I felt bad. I was at church and this guy's like, I was like, hey, can I use your church badge? I was like, beep, beep, beep. I wrote it. I was like, cool, it worked. He's like, that's my dad's. You're not going to use that, are you? I'm like, no, I'm not going to use it. I was just for educational purposes.
I'll be here midnight hanging out.
Yeah. I'm kind of known at church, so that would be a room I read. Hey, it was his badge. Yeah, he stole it. It's funny. All right, thanks, guys. These are all online. All these presentations. Go there and check it out. Go back to your work and hack away. I think the next RBTC event is going to be in March. We're not sure what it's going to be yet. Probably a panel talk.
In June, I think Taylor talked to you, right? A March and a June event, what possibly?
March. Yeah, March and June. Yeah.
Okay, so be on the lookout. Thanks again, y'all, for joining tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Safe travels home.
Thanks, guys.
And Tweaks has a gift.
Presenters, thank you, presenters. Thank you for dealing with my nagging. Well, thank you.
Yours.
Oh boy, you got toys, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we did.
Thank you for handling the
Completed
stuff.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, 4 hours of sleep. Ames.
Okay. So like that's one run.
Oh, okay. What game did I?
Iowa State.